and each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
I think GB News is completely unique in the way that we interact with our viewers.
Our audience aren't afraid to have their say. They want their voices heard now, and they've got a channel where that can happen.
I find more and more as I'm wandering around, people come up to me and they say, "We saw you on television." I say, "Oh yes, on what?" "On GB News." "Hello, are you the famous Sue?"
The whole crew hit me here now. We came to celebrate.
It's our job to be the eyes and ears of the viewers.
They are part of the GBNews family, and I'm pleased to say it's a very large family.
And if people go to the time and trouble of listening and watching, then we've got to do a good job for them.
Well, I'm here right in the epicentre of the protest.
Here we go again.
If you just tuned in, where have you been?
It is raucous here tonight.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Live from Washington, D.C., this is Bev Turner on GB News with the stories shaping Great Britain and the United States of America.
Both suspects in this case are deceased. We have 3 confirmed adults that are deceased at the Islamic Center.
Huge developing situation coming out of California this evening. 5 dead after a shooting at an Islamic center in San Diego. We're due an update this hour, so stay tuned for that also tonight.
They think that they are getting very close to making a deal.
Donald Trump has called off a strike on Iran as he says a deal is on the cusp. We've heard that before. And in the last few moments, Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper has said that Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz could result in tens of millions going hungry. I'll be talking to a furious farmer in Wales who'll tell me that is a load of rubbish, as well as her counterpart in America. Also,
AR's parents bear considerable blame for what occurred.
Well, after the horrific Southport attack, of course, part of the blame was laid at the parents, not the government. Now the government has announced mums and dads will face harsher punishments if their children break the law. I'm Bev Turner. This is The Late Show Live. Very warm welcome. Thank you for joining me this evening. In Washington, my panel, former Obama policy advisor Laurie Watkins is with us. Laurie, good evening.
Good evening, Bev.
And former Chief of Staff to Marco Rubio, Matt Terrell is with us. And in London, businessman and activist Adam Brooks, commentator and broadcaster Matt Stadlen. Now, last time the two Matts were on, you had a bit of a Barney. The last time Laurie and Adam is on, in fact, every time Laurie and Adam are on, there's a bit of a Barney. So it could be a little spicy tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Excellent panel. Delighted to have you all with us. Let's turn to the top, though. This breaking news story out of San Diego this evening. Police are now saying that 2 suspects are dead and the threat has been neutralized after a shooting at the Islamic Center in San Diego.
There is no further threat. Both suspects in this case are deceased. All of the kids are safe. Our hearts go out to the families that are in this moment being notified of what has happened to their loved ones. We have 3 confirmed adults that are deceased at the Islamic Center.
Let's speak now to US political reporter from the Daily Mail, Victoria Churchill. Victoria, what do we know this evening as we sit here, 7 p.m. DC time, 12 a.m. in London? What's the latest, Victoria?
Well, always great to be back on with you, Bev. And, unfortunately, it has to be in a situation just like this. But the reports that I'm seeing is that these shooters were 17 and 19 years of age. There was a security guard who bravely either neutralized them himself or helped neutralize them. And, you know, of course, we have to think about the fact that this happened in California, which has some of the most restrictive and invasive policies on firearm ownership. And, you know, for those that advocate for gun rights across the country, I think we're seeing time and time again that these radical gun control policies really do not save lives at the end. The only thing that they do is increase restrictions on law-abiding citizens or gun owners, and it has no impact when it comes to preventing acts of mass violence, unfortunately. And it only leaves people defenseless.
Yeah, we understand, I think, Victoria, this evening, and we are going to get an update, we believe, from the law enforcement in the area whilst we're on air in this first hour. But we understand, as you say, that these two perpetrators, aged 17 and 19, rather mysteriously found dead in a car a few blocks from the incident with gunshot wounds believed to be self-inflicted. It certainly at the moment doesn't follow the profile of what we would imagine as a standard, let's say, a school shooting, because there is a school attached to the mosque, and the police are considering it, they say, a hate crime unless they are proved otherwise. What are you drawing from some of these details?
I mean, I think that they are absolutely correct to consider this a hate crime. I think any time when you have any incident that is racially or religiously motivated based on people's backgrounds, that is, of course, consideration for a hate crime. You know, of course, this is still very much a developing situation. But, you know, again, I think it's interesting that law enforcement was, you know, able to confirm the adults, but they kind of, when it comes to teenagers and to youth, they're a little bit more hesitant of that. That is pretty standard when it comes to cases like this. But again, it also just goes to show that, you know, particularly with the 17-year-old, right, pretty much nowhere in America can you own firearms under the age of 18. California's own governor, Gavin Newsom, has proposed the 28th Amendment, which would raise that age from 18 to 21 nationwide for any kind of firearms. And so, you know, we look at cases like this where these proposed measures would unfortunately not have saved lives. And of course, we can't even forget the White House Correspondents' Dinner shooter, you know, the event that I was at just a couple weeks ago, where that man also came from California and obtained his firearms legally. And so, you know, again, California really seems to be the root of a lot of really crazy problems and issues that are impacting America nationwide.
Yeah, when we have these sorts of shootings in the UK, Victoria, be it at a synagogue or a mosque, thoughts, of course, instantly turn to religious rivalries, religious hatred, which may be happening on the other side of the world and ends up on our Western shores. At this stage, we don't know, but would you suspect that this could be related to that the shooters could be Jewish? We know that a suicide note was left, which is being described as having racial overtones, and that there was some scrawling on one of the weapons believed to be racial hatred as well. Hate speech scrawled on the weapon is how the police have described it. You know, we are speculating, but it looks fairly likely that it could be related to something like that.
You know, again, potentially I don't want to get ahead of the facts here, but again, what I also want to say is important to note that not in all states are people that attend religious institutions left defenseless, right? Again, we look back at the brave people in the Texas church just a couple of years ago who were able to apprehend a shooter on their own grounds. So when you look at a state like Texas compared to a state like California, one leaves their church goers, synagogue goers, mosque goers, whatever religious institution you have, defenseless, versus in the other one, these people are not left defenseless.
Yeah, thank you, Victoria, so much. Thanks for joining us. We will, of course, be keeping an eye on this developing situation. Victoria Churchill there from the Daily Mail. Let me turn to my panel here. Matt, it's so interesting for me as a Brit that when there is a shooting, the conversation so quickly turns to gun control. Is that your sort of expectation, your experience of shootings? Because in the UK, that's not what we would necessarily be talking about at a time like this.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think Victoria was spot on with what she said. You know, look, you have many of these states, California, Illinois, another state. We have very strict gun laws, but yet you see shootings time and again in these states. You know, take Illinois, the south side of Chicago. We see gun violence consistently there. So, you know, look, I always go back to guns don't kill people. people kill people. So look, we'll have to see what the real drivers were in terms of what occurred here today. I'll just note, I'm not suggesting there's a connection here, but this Islamic Center has been in the news before. In fact, 2 of the 9/11 hijackers attended this mosque. Again, not suggesting there's a connection there, but this has been in the news before. We'll see what takes shape here.
Yeah, we are going to be moving on, folks. If you're just joining us, we just want to bring you up to speed on this. It's the biggest story here in America at the moment. We're going to be looking at some more domestic politics as well in just a moment. Laurie, your thoughts on this? And yet another shooting appears to be religiously motivated. Is it too soon to assume that?
I think it is too soon to assume that, and it's way too soon also to assume that this has anything to do with anyone that affiliates or is from the Jewish faith. I mean, this racial undertones can mean anything. They could have been Christian nationalists. They could have been from some kind of other religious or nationalist hate group, for example. We're not sure of that yet, but just some quick statistics that there are 3.3 million people who live in San Diego, California, and of those 3.3 million people, 3% of the population there is made up of Muslims, and there has been a large explosion in Muslim population from 2000 to 2010 of 179% increase. Some might say that's a crazy number, but when you look at the number, like I just said, it's only 3% of the total residents who live in San Diego. But that particular mosque has been around since the mid-1980s, and I say that because also it's been around for a very long time. From people that I talked to on the ground, that mosque is well known, generations of people that their kids went there, their grandkids went there, etc. So it's very well known, and this is just a tragic situation for the entire community there. But yes, it is just another example of gun violence here in the United States of America because of some can say the lax laws that we have, or on the flip side. But yes, I'm very interested to understand whether or not these guns were purchased across state lines, etc., because they're not able to get them in California like that.
Well, luckily there were no guns on Friday. We're going to bring you some footage soon of an incident. It's just about teenage misbehavior, actually, teenage violence. There was a clip that went viral online of a load of kids kicking off here in Washington, D.C. from Friday night at a takeaway place just around the corner, actually. The Chipotle outlet. I went down there today, and we'll bring you what people were saying in the area as well in just a moment. But let's turn now to the latest developments on the conflict in the Middle East. President Trump says that the United States is holding off on a planned attack on Iran that had been scheduled for Tuesday, citing what he described as serious negotiations taking place. Here he was speaking just this evening.
Well, other countries have come to me and they've said we were getting ready to do a very major attack tomorrow. I've put it off for a little while, hopefully maybe forever, but possibly for a little while, because we've had very big discussions with Iran, and we'll see what they amount to. I was asked by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, and some others if we could put it off for 2 or 3 days, a short period of time, because they think that they are getting very close to making a deal. And if we can do that where there's no nuclear weapon going into the hands of Iran, I think, and if they're satisfied, we will be probably satisfied also.
Let's get the latest on this with geopolitical expert, friend of the show, Kate Jones. Kate, thank you so much for joining me. So President Trump crediting, if that's the right word, Qatar and Saudi Arabia for persuading him to hold back on this. What do we draw from that, Kate? What does it tell us about the situation, the tensions and the pressures which are being brought to bear now on President Trump and Iran?
Well, the president said it was just a few days. And so, you know, the pressure remains on Iran. And I would make the assumption that potentially there are some sort of negotiations going on behind the scenes. And we can look forward in the next few days to see one or the other of the results, which will be potentially military strikes or some kind of elevated situation, or equally some continuation of ceasefire and further discussions. So I think that in terms of the Gulf states, they really do not wish to see further attacks on their infrastructure, and particularly more recently where the Iranians have showed that they're willing to attack their alternate routes for shipping fuel and very sensitive targets. So over the weekend, there were some incidents and where not entirely sure on the ones against Saudi Arabia. But I think that the Gulf states really do not wish to have any further attacks. They'd like to see the shipping of oil resume and some sort of negotiation on the table. At the same time, I believe that Iran is under a lot of pressure because the economic outcome right now with this blockade against their ports means they're not pulling in the sort of financial benefit of their oil. And China is also indubitably probably pressuring them after these conversations that took place with China between Xi and Trump. You know, Xi said he would also have some kind of help. We don't know what that's defined as, but some help with Iran. And of course, the reason for that is China is facing higher manufacturing costs and of petrochemicals and refining of their fuel, because they're taking in about 80+% of the Iranian export of crude. So it affects them at about 10 to 12% of their imports. So pressure from China, this whole sort of global economic situation starts to pressure everyone. You know, it's really, we're in a new age of economic statecraft in which the interdependencies that came about from the global economy are now a kind of weapon, a kind of leverage and a pressure to get the result that a nation wants, whether that's Iran cutting off shipping with the threat of attack, or the United States blockading the oil shipments that are critical to an ally of Iran.
Kate, brilliant summing up for us. Thank you so much. Geopolitical expert Kate Jones there, somewhere that looks absolutely lovely. Am I allowed to ask you where you are, Kate? You've got the swimming pool in the background. Do you mind telling us where you are?
Yeah, sure. I'm at Treasure Island in Florida, and it's actually a really spectacular place. I have a place right on the beach. I highly recommend it. I'm here for Special Operations Soft Week. So it's a giant defense conference, and we'll be seeing all of the new contractors, fun things, as well as the sort of weapons and everything that Special Operations might have an eye to buy. So there will be a big demo in the
brilliant. Well, you must tell me all. Keep us updated and tell us all about it when you get back. Looks very pleasant. Kate Jones, thank you so much for joining us. Let me know your thoughts this evening. gbnews.com/your say. That is so American. I'm in Florida. I'm at a defense conference talking about.
And even with the rain, as a Floridian, even with the rain, I'm like, I'd take the rain any day.
Right, still to come this evening on The Late Show Live, I'm going to be talking to a furious farmer in Wales, as well as their counterpart in America, because in the last few moments, Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper has said that Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz could result in tens of millions going hungry. Really? After she's treated our farmers the way she has? Let's discuss that. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis, in the car,
in the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it? We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as
and now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show, live with me, Bev. Now, breaking news tonight. The Foreign Secretary is set to tell a major aid summit in London tomorrow that the world is sleepwalking into a global food crisis as Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz continues to threaten global food supplies. Yvette Cooper is expected to urge in her speech that fertilizer shipments be moved through the strait within weeks to help prevent a global emergency. Meanwhile, the World Food Programme has warned that up to 45 million people could face acute food insecurity if the blockade continues. Let's talk now to farmer Gareth Wynne-Jones and also American farmer Stephanie Nash. Thank you both for joining us this evening. Right, Gareth, let me start with you. Your thoughts on Yvette Cooper saying that there is a crisis. Is there, and is it only because of the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, they've been sleepwalking for many, many years, governments before them as well. And as you know, Bev, we've been banging that drum to explain that there has been a massive reduction in our livestock numbers, you know, less people planting crops, and there's a lot of land lost to solar farms, to developments. And as well, we have to remember all the rewilding and the wastage of good land that could be for food production. And, you know, food security should be right at the top for any government in any country. So let's not just, you know, blame this war, but these are the little tipping points. And we've been saying this for such a long time. Everybody within the farming industry, and you've heard it for years off me personally, and it's been frustrating for many, many farming families and communities to try and get the message across the government. And now the poorer people in society are going to go hungry because of this disaster that is happening in the Middle East.
And so, in a way, Stephanie, what Gareth's saying is there's no wiggle room in our system in the UK. We haven't got the capacity to deal with a situation which is so disruptive like this. In the UK, we import about 50% of our food already. We've allowed ourselves to get vulnerable. How is it for you here in America, Stephanie?
And that's something that I advocate against is, you know, American farmers and ranchers, we've been so sustainable, we've been strong. And in the last couple of years, our administration has allowed more imports than exports, and we have decreased the value of the American farmer and rancher here in the United States. And there's a lot of issues that we face. Not only did Iran, you know, make problems for us with diesel and gas prices, but there have been a lot of different topics that you can go about. Farm inputs for farmers, the amount of farmers and ranchers that we are losing on a daily basis. You know, he talked about development. In Tennessee, where I live, development has taken over much of our land and water resources. And unfortunately, many administrations and many in political power do not want to admit that they're the problem. Development and progress, we can only go so far until we lose our land and water resources. And so we need to be able to fight for that as farmers and ranchers.
Gareth, what's it like for you when you hear Stephanie talk about that and how closely connected it is to your own situation, this global movement of travel where farmers feel that they're being harmed by those in power? It's tragic.
Well, it's a global agenda, isn't it? And it's been a global agenda for a long time, let's be honest with each other. But let's look at the UK as well. We lost our last fertiliser ammonia producing factory in 2023, and that was due to high energy costs. So all these figures and all these problems are self-made by government, you know, from energy costs that we're not protective of our industries that makes us self-sufficient, and half the food in the world is produced with artificial fertilizer, however we look at it. So, you know, like we've said for such a long time, we are sleepwalking into food shortages and into massive food inflation. And let's not forget, you know, America is a massive country. We're a tiny little pimple, an island with a growing population that needs to be fed. Most of the food now, nearly 50%, I'd say, is coming as an import. You know, so we've got to protect the people that are producing this food, or we are going to be in a hell of a mess very, very soon.
Yeah. Stephanie, how long can the farmers in America cope without this fertiliser getting through? Or are you not vulnerable to it in the same way that we are in Europe?
Much as other countries, I think the biggest issues in our country is wondering where the land is going to go. Right now, we have 360 million acres owned by 65 years or older farmers. And there's no plan. There's no plan from the USDA. There's no plan from, you know, the administration. They want to talk about how to make America healthy again, but they don't want to talk about the truth behind farming and ranching. They don't want to talk about how farmers and ranchers are a dying breed. They don't want to talk about mental illness. They don't want to talk about the pay. You know, I love to talk about this fact that JBS, one of the biggest meat packers in the United States, made $86 billion, and the average farmer in America makes negative $1,161. We have a crisis in our country. Pay our farmers, make them valuable in every country. I mean, we should have stronger agendas for agriculture, and that's in the UK, that's in Italy, that's in Germany, that's in the United States, that is everywhere. We decrease the value of agriculture too much, and it's going to cause a food security issue for the future.
Yeah. Thank you both. Genuinely, I think that was one of the most illuminating interviews I've done on Late Show Live, and it's just so interesting and also so depressing at the same time to see farmers from both sides of the world struggling with exactly the same issues. Thank you so much, Gareth Wyn-Jones there and Stephanie Nash. Let me go to my panel in England, shall we now, just to reflect upon that. Guys, I mean, two very different sort of lifestyles. You saw the wet Welsh fields of Gareth Wyn-Jones and these, you know, sunny uplands of America, but still, Adam, the same issues across the world. And as Gareth said, it is this globalist agenda. And when you see it laid out before you like that, you realise it's true. But what are we going to eat?
Yeah, it's worrying. And look, from a selfish point of view, I think we're going to see a big problem with beer in hospitality. Beer relies on CO2 coming from that region through natural gas. We rely on, you know, the crops that come from around the world as well to brew the beer. So there could be a real problem with that. And, you know, I don't believe we're going to run out of food here. I really don't. But there are going to be certain things that we are going to have to start rationing or go without in the coming months. I'm just hoping that, you know, I back what Donald Trump's doing in Iran, because I do not want my kids growing up in a future where mad mullahs have got nuclear weapons, mullahs that hate us, you know, and a regime that kills its own people, wants to kill women for showing their hair. They're monsters. I want them dealt with. And one thing I will say, and I hope, he's managed to somehow unite the Middle East. When this is over, I believe we're going to be living in real safer times. It's going to be a safe Middle East, something we haven't seen for 50 years, I hope. So I hope he pulls this off.
I hope so. I hope so. Matt Stadlen, the farmers, though, back to their situation with these reduced fertilisers coming in. What do you see when you hear that story laid out like that?
So much to get our teeth into. Just to respond briefly to what Adam said, if the Middle East is united, apart from Iran for starters, then it's united because they're desperate for Iran not to strike them, as they've already been struck. Like Adam, I certainly don't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon. Big question is whether this conflict has made that less likely, possibly more likely. And guess what? Iran isn't just capable of blackmailing the world if it, heaven forbid, does get a nuclear weapon. It's shown that it can blackmail the world, threaten the world, put a gun to our head by threatening the Strait of Hormuz. All it has to do is say that it's going to blow up a ship, and it brings the whole thing, as we've seen, to a standstill. And we shouldn't be surprised by this, because Iran has been sponsoring terrorism for decades. As to the farming, this is obviously a very serious situation which the Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, is talking about here. Like Adam, I suspect that we're not going to run out of food, but food prices may well go up in our country, and we already have a massive cost of living crisis as it is. Just look at the petrol pumps, and they haven't been going down recently as far as I can see. I use petrol a lot, and they've gone up, what, 25p, 30p is it, since the end of February, just before the war started. So it's a very serious set of circumstances.
But the difference is with this country, most Western nations have helped their population, their people, with the fuel costs. Spain cut fuel duty, it cut VAT. This country has given nothing back to its people. These people that are governing us don't seem to care about us. That's what worries me. Other nations will help their
where's the money coming from, Adam? Because it's got to come from somewhere.
Where's the money coming from other Western countries?
Well, you're calling for money to be put into our pockets, so who's going to pay for it? You, me?
Let's stop giving foreigners so many benefits, and we might be able to look after our own people.
That sounds like a positive way forward.
Let me bring Laurie in on this. Laurie, we started by talking about the fact that the Iran war is making fertiliser expensive, and farmers all around the world are sirening an alarm call right now that we need to do something about it. When you hear that situation, what do you make of it?
I spent last week driving across the country, going up to New England to visit family, and hitting 6 or 7 states along the way. And I went to farms. I come from a farming family on both sides of my family as well, and I respect the hell out of farmers. And I will say that I've been very very worrisome about not just the cost of fuel, but obviously the cost of fertilizer and ammonia and urea, etc., that is going to have cataclysmic consequences here in the United States, that even if this conflict were to stop tomorrow, we would still feel these consequences for the next few months, maybe up to 6, 7, 8 months. It's not like a faucet, nozzle you can just turn off and on. And in the UK, prices have jumped 50 to 70%. And in the United States, they've jumped 45 to 60% just from the strait being closed. And when you have 40% of globally traded urea, another mineral that I was talking about, that comes through the strait, as well as 1/3 to nearly half of globally traded nitrogen fertilizer inputs come through the strait. These are problems that I've been sounding the alarm since the first day that this conflict started, because I'm aware of what happened when the breadbasket of the world of Ukraine, when that conflict started, when Russia attacked Ukraine, and how that had cataclysmic effects to our food systems across the world, absolutely to Europe. And you all should be the most concerned, more so than the United States, but specifically those Gulf states who rely on food coming through that strait in order to survive.
Thanks, Laurie. Matt, this situation in Iran, if people start going hungry around the world, this is something that Trump has got to sort out quickly.
Well, look, I think that this war is going to come to an end, and I think it will come to an end soon. I do believe that. And look, there's no question. It may not be popular for me to say this, but I'm going to say it. There's no question that there are some temporary sacrifices that people are making right now and are going to need to make. And the truth is, we shouldn't be here right now. But we are, because no other U.S. president in American history has done what has been needed to be done to ensure that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon. We cannot allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. And President Trump is the only president, the only world leader who's taken the necessary steps to ensure that Iran does not acquire, attain, or have a nuclear weapon. That is vital. And the truth is, some sacrifices are going to be made. I think the good news is they'll be temporary, and that's key.
Okay. Right, thank you, folks. Still a lot to come this evening on The Late Show Live, including this.
AR's parents bear considerable blame for what occurred.
Well, that was after the horrific Southport attack, of course. Part of the blame was laid with the parents, not the government. Sorry, now the government has announced that mums and dads will face harsher punishments if their children break the law. Should they be more responsible for their kids' actions? This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it? Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Now, parents and guardians could face tougher penalties, including possible jail sentences if their child commits a crime under plans to overhaul the UK's youth justice system. New figures show that 8 in 10 prolific offenders in England and Wales commit their first offence as a child, while nearly 2/3 of young people released from custody reoffend within a year. Under the shake-up, parenting orders, which are court-mandated measures aimed at helping parents and guardians manage a child's behaviour, will also be strengthened. The plan also includes a new youth intervention courts pilot, bringing together judges, youth justice services and specialist support to tackle the root causes of offending. Let me come to my panel here in America, first of all, on this. Matt, good idea, or should there just be stricter punishments for the kids? Take responsibility, learn responsibility.
Yeah. Well, I think it's an and not or approach, right? Certainly we have to hold kids accountable. You've seen that in the UK, but right here in Washington, D.C., Navy Yard, we've seen at the Chipotle recently.
We're going to come on to that in the rest of this evening.
I don't want to ruin it, but I'll tell you this much right now. I think it's an and not or approach. I think within reason. I think if you have parents out there who are dropping kids off past curfew or aren't being responsible in the sense of parenting and appear to be kind of promoting or supporting kids doing wrong, then yes, I think they should be held accountable in that sense. But look, kids should be held accountable at the end of the day. They're the ones who are doing these actions.
Laurie, what do you think? Because I have concerns about this movement of travel. I want parents to take responsibility for their kids, but the bottom line is they don't have responsibility for their kids. For whatever reason, they don't. And so punishing the parents isn't going to teach them to take responsibility for the kids. It's just going to result in parents probably getting violent with their own kids. I predict this is going to cause breakdowns of family, because you're going to get teenage boys trying to get out of the door. You could have a dad, if there is a dad, saying you're not going out of the door. They end up fighting. You're going to see families seeing more of social services. This is going to cause more family breakdown, I think. What do you reckon?
Well, with all due respect, Viv, I think that there's probably already a breakdown in the family dynamic and structure if something like this is happening. But I will bring up two cases here in the United States that I was supportive of, and I am still supportive of the measures, so maybe it's contradictory to the point you just were trying to make. But Colin Gray, 14 years old, Colt Gray, 14-year-old, and Colin Gray was his dad.
Talking of, sorry, let's just listen to this press conference. We'll come back to this in San Diego about the shooting. Here we go.
Of today. This is a city's and a community's absolute worst nightmare as a free society. And I appreciate all of your patience as we try to work through and piece this scene back together again. I have some updated information that I want to make sure everybody has. At about 9:42 this morning, we received a call of a runaway juvenile. After speaking with the mom began to piece together bits and pieces of information over an extended period of time. The information that she was gathering and conveying to us began to elevate the threat level that we were perceiving with this information. She believed her son was suicidal, and she began to share information that several of her weapons were missing. Her vehicle was missing, in addition to her son. She also said that her son was with a companion, and that they were dressed in camo, and that is not consistent with what we would typically see from somebody that is suicidal. That began to trigger a larger threat assessment picture. Our threat management unit began to take the tips and leads that we had and utilize the technology we have available to us. Our license plate readers was at the top of that list. We began to have, we noted that there were hits with the vehicle down in Fashion Valley. We dispatched officers into the area of the mall as a possible location that was a threat. We also gathered information that One of the individuals was associated in some form or fashion with Madison High School. We alerted the school police department, and we dispatched officers into the area of Madison High School. While we were gathering this information and we were trying to zero in on where these individuals were at, we received the call at approximately 11:43 that there was an active shooter at the Islamic Center. Officers were in the area, still talking with mom, trying to piece together where they might be, the locations that she felt that they would be at. And that was just a few blocks away. Those officers, once they heard what was happening at the Islamic Center, immediately dispatched themselves to the mosque. And just to recap what we talked about earlier, when officers arrived on scene, they came across, in some form or fashion, 3 deceased individuals, victims. One was a security guard at the center.
See the big guy?
We'll get some questions in just a minute, sir. Thank you. Because of what the officers were encountering, and because we know that this is a large gathering facility with kids, with adults, with community members from throughout our county, officers immediately began to enter the facility, utilizing our active shooter protocol, looking for a suspect or two. At about the same time as they were making entry and searching through the facility, room by room, we received calls of a vehicle a couple blocks away that was shooting at a landscaper. The landscaper is going to be okay, but we are still investigating that scene. It appears he may have been shot in the helmet that deflected and saved his life, but that is not totally confirmed at this point. A couple blocks away from there, we also received a call where a community member reported our 2 suspects in a vehicle, and it appeared they had gunshot wounds, and upon our arrival, we determined they were deceased. We are in the process of serving search warrants that will continue tonight and on into the days ahead. We're going to continue following any leads and any information that comes forward, as we're all focused on figuring out how this happened and what could we have done to prevent it. I will end by saying it's not a cliche. If you see something, if you hear something, if you know something, that is an integral part of preventing things like this from happening, and it's an integral part for us to be able to take that information, utilize the tools that we have to try to prevent something like this from happening. So with that, I'm going to bring up Mark Remley from the FBI to discuss a little bit more information.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Chief. My name is Mark Remley. I am the Special Agent in charge of the FBI San Diego Field Office. As was reported earlier, 3 adults have lost their lives in today's senseless act of violence. We also know the 2 teenage subjects responsible are also deceased. The FBI is determined to uncover all the facts associated with this incident and learn why this shooting occurred at the Islamic Center of San Diego. Here's what we know at this time after our preliminary assessment and working closely with our law enforcement partners to gather evidence. Victim specialists deployed to the Reunification Center at 4125 Hathaway in San Diego. We're also having additional victim services personnel deploy from our headquarters in Washington, D.C. to assist with the families that have been impacted. Our bomb techs have cleared the vehicle associated with the subjects. We are in the process of interviewing family and friends of the subjects, Evidence response teams are gathering all the evidence from the scene for review. We will process everything as quickly but as meticulously as we can. We again thank you for your patience as we work through the scene. The FBI stands with the communities we serve, and our hearts weigh heavy for those killed and everyone who's subjected to this violence today. Shooting incidents like this not only impact those within the immediate vicinity, but everyone in the community also feels the effects. We will continue to coordinate with our law enforcement partners and work closely with them for as long as it takes until we understand what happened. We will leave no stone unturned. We thank the public for your continued cooperation. As we continue to work through this active investigation, we ask that you send photos, videos, or any visual evidence or information you may have to fbi.gov/Islamic Center of San Diego shooting. As I mentioned earlier, no piece of information is too small. Everything helps us gather all the relevant evidence we need to better understand why this horrific incident occurred. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the mayor for some comments.
Thank you.
Fucking direct result of your leadership! Your leadership! Our Muslim brothers and sisters have been talking to you for how long? You have to fucking listen to them, Todd. Just like you did with ICE. It was rolled in ICE. It was rolled in Zionist propaganda. And you'll keep doing it as long as it lines your fucking pockets, won't it? Show something. Worse approval rating than a fascist dictator with shit in his pants.
Today, our city was shaken by a violent act of hate here at the Islamic Center of San Diego, and my heart is with every person that is impacted by this horrific tragedy. No one in our city should live in fear because of their identity, their faith, or their place of learning. I'm grateful to the San Diego Police Department, our San Diego Fire Rescue Department, and our partners at the local, state, and federal level, all of whom showed up here to help with this investigation and this response and help to bring this threat to an end. This tragedy is particularly hurtful to our Muslim community as it comes together at the start of the Dhul Hijjah, one of Islam's holiest periods leading up to the Hajj and the Eid al-Adha, a time of deep faith, reflection, and unity. Hate has no home in San Diego. Islamophobia has no home in San Diego. An attack on any San Diegan is an attack on all San Diegans, and we will not stand for it in America's finest city. Let there be no misunderstanding for anyone who would seek to bring this kind of violence to this city. You will be met with the full force of our law enforcement partnerships. And anyone who seeks to do harm here will understand the response will be swift and you will be brought to justice. In the meantime, I want to assure San Diegans, in particular our Muslim brothers and sisters, the San Diego Police Department will be guarding all of our local houses of worship with additional presence to assure your safety during this very, very tragic time. We'll be guarding other houses of worship and making sure that we anticipate and try and prevent the very worst. We didn't meet that mark today, but I have deep gratitude to the security officer who was here, whose actions and heroism undoubtedly saved lives. And I'm grateful to every law enforcement individual who ran toward this call to help bring these people to justice. My prayers and my thoughts and our whole hearts community is with the Islamic Center of San Diego and all Muslim San Diegans. With that, I'll turn it back to our chief.
Before I open up to questions, we're a little over 5 hours outside of this incident. Understand the complexity of and the dynamics of a situation like this and the emotions that are without a doubt behind everything that's going on. Much of what else there is to answer is currently being investigated, and I cannot go into some of those details. But I will do my best to try to make sure that you guys have the information you need moving forward. So with that, I will open up to some questions. Yes, sir. Hang on. Trevor, go ahead. Yeah, we are actively investigating this as a hate crime. There are details and information that we are investigating as to exactly what those what the hate speech or the hate words were that were conveyed. Some of that is going to have to take more time to develop further to see where that information is coming from. But yes, it's being investigated as a hate crime at this point. There was definitely hate rhetoric that was involved. That was found inside the, it was involved or was found? Involved. I'll leave it at that for now. Yes.
What about the security guard? We had heard earlier reports that he engaged with these guys in some gunfight.
It's still preliminary. We're still looking into that. We do believe the security guard was able to help at least minimize the situation to the front area of the mosque. Until we know more, I don't want to speculate, but at this point I think it's fair to say his actions were heroic, and undoubtedly he saved lives today. Yes, ma'am. I don't have details, but yes, the call came in as a runaway, and then it kind of elevated as mom began to kind of piece together what she was finding with her son being missing. She she realized that she was missing weapons, multiple weapons. Her vehicle was missing. There are details that she was beginning to develop a bigger picture as to what she was dealing with, was conveying that to our folks, and we were trying to put that together and get out in front of this as quickly as we could. She found some note left by him. What that note looks like, what that note says, I'm not going to disclose right now. Yes, sir. Search warrants that we're going to be serving, I'm not going to put that information out right now. No.
Can you release the name of the victim?
Some of that information, that's what we're actively looking and investigating right now. Obviously, we have a lot of questions. Is what led up to this moment, and that will be ongoing in this investigation as we move forward. I'm sorry? I'm not sure at this point. We've just basically notified family of those victims. We're not going to put out their identity right now. We will put that information out here in the days ahead. But for now, we're not putting that information out. We're trying to protect kind of what we have. There's more work to be done, and we want to make sure that we're preserving some of that for the moment. Yes, ma'am. I'm going to let Imam Taha answer that type of question. I don't know for sure. I don't know for sure. 17 and 18. Yeah, I think it's 18. And then I need to correct that. I think I put out earlier it was 19. I believe it's 18. No. Unknown. At least one, but unknown about the other one. It just in general, well, I think it's fair to say that all religious facilities across this country, around the world, in today's world, are well aware of the risks that are associated. It's an unfortunate reality of the world we live in today. But I would say absolutely, everybody feels that insecurity. Well, first, let me make sure I'm clear. There was no specific threat, especially no specific threat to the Islamic Center. It was just general hate kind of speech that I think covered a wide gamut. I don't want to go into any of the specifics at this point. Again, we are still actively investigating this as we speak, but it was more generalized. In some form or capacity, he was associated with the school as a student. Exactly what that capacity is, we're not sure of just yet. So the question is, was there a specific threat to the high school? There was no specific threat to any facility or any place with what we knew. There was generalized hate rhetoric and speech. Mom believed that her son was suicidal, but the additional bits of information led us to believe that there was a bigger threat picture here that we needed to consider. One person that's suicidal is not going to take 3 weapons from a location. Those little bits of information were significant and important that triggered a much bigger threat assessment that began to bring additional investigators in to utilize the technology that we have available to try to get out in front of what we feared would be coming. But there was no specific threat to this center or any religious facility or any school or any mall in any way. I want to make sure that's clear. We don't get that wrong. We're still investigating, but yes, we do believe that's all associated with the larger picture of today's events. It's not. They're not separate. Let me, sir, go ahead.
So, Chief, I want to know, and I'm probably interesting, how do you plan to protect these sites of worship? Why just strikes leading officers to
Yeah. So, first of all, this is why we need the community. This is a partnership. Public safety is a shared responsibility. It is important that people share information when they see, hear, or know something that pertains to threats of violence. That is what allows us to filter through who is going to cause harm and who is not. So that information is priority one.
You know when you're going to reopen the mosque?
I'll let Imam Taha speak to that.
Chief, just as a clarification, the mother that you're speaking about, mother of the younger juvenile or the younger?
The younger. All right, listen, folks, we'll sit here all night and go question and answer. We will provide more information when more information is available and we have more of the information confirmed that we're now starting to speculate on. I want to make sure that you have the details thus far so that you understand exactly what we were responding to, what we were dealing with. And I'll close by saying this. Our hearts go out to the families, obviously the greater Muslim community. We're one city, and we're one community. As police chief, I am grateful that we have police officers and sheriff's deputies from throughout this county that dropped what they were doing and didn't do just what they were trained to do. They did what we hired them to do, to step into harm's way, to be willing to run towards gunfire, to protect people they don't even know. And so with that, thank you for your patience, and we will be back out in the days ahead with more information. Thank you.
My name is Taha Hassan. I'm the Imam and the Director of the Islamic Center of San Diego. All what I can say at this moment is that my community is mourning. My community is mourning. This is something that we have never expected to take place. But at the same time, the religious intolerance and the hate, unfortunately, that exists in our nation is unprecedented. All of us, we are responsible for spreading the culture of tolerance, the culture of love. All of us, we are responsible from whatever position we have as parents, as media people, as elected officials, as law enforcement, as religious leaders. All of us, we can do something to protect our nation, to protect our society. And please, I have one request to the media. Stop sharing the picture of the victims. I heard that there is a picture of an uncovered body going on. Please respect the privacy of the families and stop sharing these kind of pictures, please. Let the families mourn. Let them pray, as we do always at the Islamic Center of San Diego. It's a house of worship, it's not a battlefield. Come on. People come to the mosque to pray, to socialize, to celebrate, to enjoy their time together. Muslims and non-Muslims alike, everyone have been always welcomed. Our doors are always welcomed. We never ask people when they show up at the door of the Islamic Center, we never ask them whether you are a Muslim or not, who are you? Because everyone is welcome. So let's do our best to spread this culture of love and tolerance and sympathy for the sake of this nation, for the sake of the future generation.
All of our world.
Thank you so much.
Based in love.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all that we have for right now. We will be doing Spanish separately. Give us a minute.
So that was the press conference there in reaction to this shooting this afternoon. We heard from Scott Wall, the San Diego Chief of Police, and Mark Remley from the FBI, the Mayor of San Diego, Todd Gloria as well. And we also heard then from the imam from the mosque, and we heard from a heckler partway through that. It was quite difficult to hear what she was saying. We think she might have been criticising President Trump. Matt Terrell, is that what you took from that heckler there, what she was shouting about?
Yeah,
it was hard to hear.
I couldn't quite make it out
myself. And apologise for the language that if you did hear, there were a few F words in there.
I heard a few of those. Look, obviously it wasn't appropriate what she did. This is a horrific, sad day. And certainly I think the local police, the FBI, the other officials on the ground obviously have to deal with the situation right now and figure out exactly why this occurred. But look, the bottom line here is we've seen anti-Semitic activity take shape. We've seen attacks against those who are of the Christian faith. Now, we don't know the full reasons why these attacks occurred, but I just want to say it sounds like there's a security guard here based on the reporting here who was killed, who it sounds like based on the reporting did just tremendous heroic acts. And obviously the thoughts and prayers to all the victims right now.
One of the things that always strikes me about America is how quickly the law enforcement officers will get the information out and how much information they actually give us about these events. So what we learned there, if you are just tuning in just after 1 o'clock in the morning in the UK, is that at 9:42 this morning, a very concerned mother contacted the police to say that her son was suicidal. He said she worked out that he'd taken several of her weapons and also her car, that he was wearing camo gear and he had a friend with him. The police pieced together this was not a typical suicide attempt, and they set out, it sounds, Laurie, like they did an amazing job. They tried to find, with number plate recognition, where this car might be. They went to the mall, they looked at the high school, which we I think we heard the confirmation there that this is where at least one of these boys would have gone to. The obvious places, maybe, if these were young people intent on causing violence, and then they got the call to say that this attack had been carried out at the school, at the mosque, which is attached to a junior school, we think. But this now makes sense why there were so many police so quickly at the site immediately. I mean, this is where America does do a remarkable job under these sorts of circumstances.
Yes,
not good enough.
As far as contact tracing, using all of the equipment that we have around the United States of America, especially in these very heavily populated cities, to help with facial recognition, determine car license plates, etc., to be able to very quickly be able to piece and put these kinds of cases together. I wrote down here, though, didn't reach in time. Yes, I agree with you. That's why there was so many law enforcement that were at the ready, was because they had put out this call for them to be on alert. But it just holding back tears, because I just keep thinking there just wasn't enough time. They had almost found these kids before there was time for them to take other people's lives, unfortunately. It's just very tragic when you hear the details laid out like that officer just laid them out like that.
Yeah, and they really did. Let's go to Matt and Adam in London. They really do lay out the details, don't they, in the event of a situation like this, in a way that we wouldn't have this sort of transparency in the UK. I'm never sure at a time like this if it's good or bad for a legal case. Matt Stadlen, we don't know who the perpetrators are at the moment. The police are saying that they will consider it to be a hate and a racially aggravated crime unless they can prove otherwise. But my thoughts are, actually, it ties to the story we were talking before, with the mother who had to make that phone call. The story we said before in the UK, that parents would be punished under situations like this, that was clearly a mother who was absolutely desperate, and she knew what was coming round the corner, and then she called the police, Matt.
Unimaginable for that mother and for the parents of everyone involved in this horrific incident. But I was having exactly the same thoughts, Bev, as we were watching that press conference, how it links to our earlier conversation that we were having about parental responsibility and the extent to which the law should get involved with parental responsibility when we're talking about children. And I don't think either of the suspects were children in this case, as far as I can see. I want to speak to a wider point, if I may, and that is that this is being treated as a hate crime. Clearly, that's what the police officer said. So we don't know yet exactly what the motive was, but it appears that it was Islamophobic. We want to be unbelievably careful in this country that we don't sleepwalk into a state of mass Islamophobia. Just imagine the terror of the children involved in that incident. And imagine what Muslim families up and down America must be feeling right now. Imagine what Muslim families in our country must be feeling. I think there are just shy of 4 million Muslims in Britain, a relatively tiny percentage of the 70 million or whatever there are of us. And we have to look after them. We have to watch their backs, just as we do Jews who have come under attack in this country in recent times. There is no place for hate and bigotry. And in the end, if it continues in the way that it is at the moment, the risk is that we get more attacks on synagogues, more attacks on mosques. We've seen attacks already. Nothing good comes from this, nothing good. I'm a profound opponent of Islamism, but I'm a great defender of British Muslims, as I am of British Jews. No good comes from the sort of hate that we see spiralling out of control in our society, not just on social media, but from some of the things that I saw come out of the mouths of some of those involved in the march on London over the weekend. It was absolute filth, and we need to be completely wide-eyed now about the threat, both to Muslims in Britain and to Jews.
OK, Adam Brooks, come in. There's a lot to get at there.
Look, let's just remember, we live in a capital, well, we're working right now in a capital city where cars, convoys of cars went round Jewish areas calling for the rape of Jewish women, and calling to hurt Jews in London, and they wasn't prosecuted. You know, we are seeing the Jewish community targeted so badly in this country, and the authorities are not standing up to that. And unfortunately, many in the Muslim community do not speak out against this, maybe through fear, but we have a serious Islamism problem in this country, extreme Islam problem in this country, and it seems to get ignored. I think 90% of our terror watch list are Islamist extremists. Now, we've seen children maimed in Manchester, terrorist attacks. We've seen people killed on the streets of London. Now, look, this is an awful, awful situation, and I would not wish this on anyone. And I stand by the Muslim community in that area of the US. No one deserves to die because of their religion, and if it is because of that, that's disgusting. I don't want to see any religion targeted, but we need to now stand up, all communities, and that includes the Muslim community, and call out the extremists within. And that is the problem here. We're not seeing that in London, we're not seeing that in the UK, and you know, we have authorities and our own government that are tiptoeing around this Islamism threat, right, as if it's not happening. Well, it is happening. It's the main threat in this country to terrorists, and we need to, you know, call it out, Bev.
But there's no tiptoeing whatsoever.
Yes,
let me just be clear. There's no tiptoeing.
Keir Starmer wouldn't even mention the word Islamism.
75%, you used the word 90%, I think. As far as I know, 75% of what concerns our security services is Islamic extremism. So it is taken extremely seriously by those who are paid to keep us safe. You look at me, I'm someone who's well known as someone on the centre-left of politics. And as I've already said, there's no place for Islamism or Islamic extremism, Islamic terrorism in our country. There's also no place for Islamophobia. There is no place for hate. And we must not tar whole communities with the behaviour or the views of some, because that is what prejudice is all about.
But we need communities to start speaking out. That was my whole point.
And they do.
All right, let's move on, chaps. I want to talk to a former police officer, an FBI special agent, Michael Tabman, now about the situation in San Diego. Michael, thank you for joining us on The Late Show Live. You may have heard that press conference there. Some unusual aspects to this case, not least the fact that when we normally think of, and correct me if I'm wrong, a random shooter, somebody that's left the house with a gun, they're normally alone. And in this situation, you've got two young men that have gone out together. What pieces of this story, Michael, strike you as unusual?
Well, the fact that we had two individuals, two young men acting in concert is unusual, but not unprecedented. We know that, of course, from Columbine, and we know that from the West Side, I think it was West Side School in Arkansas back in the late 90s, but two very young kids tried to ambush a school. So again, not unprecedented, but generally, if I didn't know the facts of the case, I would have thought that it was a lone shooter, because it usually is. I'm going to just hazard a guess here and think that one of the kids was more the dominant individual, influenced the other and kind of controlled the situation and brought the other one along for whatever reason. Misery loves company. And then we wound up with two kids instead of one acting as shooters.
Yeah, and the situation, it sounds, Michael, as though the mother acted quickly and did everything that she could first thing this morning to talk to the police when she knew that her son had gone missing at 9:45 in the morning, and they pieced together they were wearing khaki clothing, they had weapons, they'd taken the car. What would the response have been at that point? What would the chain of events have been?
Well, I think the chain of events from that call, from as described by the chief of police, is everything it should have been, which was trying to locate these individuals using good intelligence. By that I mean, information and all the data points that we have, and trying to get there in time before something happened. As one of your speakers noted, it was just a few minutes late, no fault of the police department. Just unfortunate, but I think they did everything they could have reasonably done to try to stop this based on the information from the mother.
Now, we aren't reporting the names of the perpetrators, the suspected perpetrators who took their own lives. There is one news outlet that is. We can't verify that at the moment. Of course, social media are talking about the names of these 17 and 18-year-olds. But why wouldn't the police have released the names of these two deceased men at this point?
Sometimes we're worried about a number of things in terms of evidence, but we're also worried about securing their family in case of any retaliation that might happen after this. And we also want to make sure that we are correct. You see often how much the wrong information gets out there, not because of incompetence or deliberate lying, just in the heat of the moment, information comes forward. We say, and then sometimes we're wrong. We certainly don't want to put out the wrong names. We want to make sure we're correct. We want to make sure the family's protected. And for whatever reason, we may not want to give out the name if it's going to harm some evidence or some future investigation that they have in mind. If the decision is made, they could give it out, they give it out. I have been in the situation of having to do a press conference in a mass shooting, and I know I took the approach of giving out as much information as possible. The community is hurting, and they want that information. You just have to sometimes give that information to satiate their need to know something during this time of crisis.
Yeah. Just before we went to that press conference, Michael, we were talking about a change in the law in the UK whereby parents could now be held responsible, charged and potentially even imprisoned for the behaviour of their own children. Do you think that's a healthy move for any society to go in? Because this evening I'm thinking about this mother who could be held responsible for this, but she's grieving the loss of her clearly mentally unwell son.
Well, you know, having raised 3 kids of my own, 3 boys, the thought of always being responsible for their actions, it could be a little troublesome. And there's no half nurture, half nature. You don't always can control what your kids do. But the mom did the right thing. But the reality is she is going to have to answer for why her son got hold of her weapons, either criminally or civilly. Yeah. But that question is still coming down the pike.
Yeah. And where would those weapons have to be kept by law in the US?
Inaccessible to others, and especially, I don't know if it was the 18-year-old, the 17-year-old, but the 17-year-old is a minor by U.S. law, so you have to keep these weapons under lock and key. But civilly speaking, you just have to be reasonable. You just can't leave it lying around. So even if it's not criminal negligence, you're still going to be held civilly liable because you just can't have young people or people who aren't supposed to be in possession of a weapon able to get it. And the question will be, does she know her son was having any kind of mental illness or mental issues just prior to this? And if so, again, why wasn't that weapon really secured to make sure this didn't happen? So unfortunately, this mom who is grieving and is in pain is going to have to answer a lot of questions.
Yeah, it's a very good point, Michael. Thank you so much. Former police officer and FBI special agent, Michael Tabman. Thank you. Thanks so much. Are we moving on? What are we doing now? 1:20 in the morning. Obviously, we've missed a couple of breaks for you. Let's move on. The government has announced a new specialist law enforcement unit to target criminal gangs operating from what we call dodgy shops on high streets across the UK. The £20 million backed National Crime Agency will include recruiting 75 new police officers dedicated to tackling high street crime. Now, this is, of course, after alarming new research revealed that up to half of convenience stores are now linked to organised crime across some areas of Britain. That is just extraordinary. So this is shops like vape shops, barbers, takeaways, shops like that, suspected of black market trading, counterfeiting and money laundering. This is just so shocking. The Chartered Trading Standards Institute's report revealed hotspots including Birmingham, Liverpool and London. And a BBC investigation has exposed that people smugglers are directing migrants to pay for illegal channel crossings using a network of UK-registered businesses, including high street shops. Let's have a quick look at that on the BBC. Here we go.
The shop worker knows what the money's for and the risks involved. Why do you move money for people smugglers?
We don't move money.
You know it's dangerous. You know that people die on these boats.
We don't do any because that's job we don't do. We have only phone shop we have.
Oh, it makes me so angry. With me now, former Metropolitan Police Detective Peter Blexley. Peter, it makes me angry. It must make the steam come out of your ears. We walk down these high streets, we see these shops. We know in our gut instinct they're dodgy as heck. About time, isn't it, that resources were put into exposing this?
Yeah, it definitely is. Unfortunately, we've had decades of underfunded law enforcement, whether that be police, National Crime Agency, trading standards, immigration, border force, and it all combines to having lawless high streets with barbers, vape shops, nail bars, and much more just operating as fronts for serious and organised crime, which includes people smuggling, drug dealing, counterfeit currency, counterfeit cigarettes. The list goes on and on. You really don't have to travel too far to find a high street just like that in Britain, and it's very, very depressing.
And you know what makes me cross, Peter? Is that for years in the UK, the corner shop run by an immigrant, working really hard. When we were little, you knew the guy that ran the corner shop. He's probably from Pakistan, he's probably from India, he's come over, he's working hard, he's grafting, he's the person who's got the shop open on Christmas Day. You know, 24 hours a day, some of these shops. Now, these guys who are genuinely working hard and running businesses which are abiding by the law are the ones who are going to know and have their windows put in because of some of these migrants who've come over, because they're almost always run by Turkish people now, again, by Pakistani men, by Indian men, younger generation just taking what they can get. And that's the implications of this, is it's going to create so much animosity and so much hate on our streets because these criminal kids can't be locked up. What do we do about it?
Yeah, and let's remember the Ugandan Asians that came over in the 70s, others from Kenya, who set up these shops and absolutely always had something in store that you'd run out of and you needed, and they've been backbones of community. My mate Cowpesh, who runs our local shop, is the absolute epitome of that, the backbone of our local community. And I'm afraid that the good ones will get tarred with the same brush possibly as the bad ones. I sincerely hope not. But this is what happens when successive governments over the decades have just underfunded law enforcement completely. Then we've had open border policies, essentially. And so many people have flooded into this country that, quite frankly, should not be here. And they've got more. They started with a toehold, then they've got a foothold. Now they've got an absolute grip on our high streets. And it's very, very depressing to see. A couple of weeks ago, I was in beautiful Shrewsbury, however you want to pronounce it. And the amount of barbers that I counted in that town, well, quite frankly, it should have a population of about 3.5 billion if those barbers were going to actually earn a living and be legitimate and be straight, because there was so many of them. And people know the length and breadth of the country. So many of these places, nail shops, vape shops, barbers, corner shops, convenience stores, are merely fronts for laundering the dirty money of organised crime.
Yeah, and what can these new police officers do? What they're going to have new powers, are they? We've seen some footage online actually recently of people from trading standards being threatened. A woman who had her home address targeted by some of these barbers, these Turkish crooks. They said, if you try and close down our business, we're going to come and kill you and your kids. I mean, how do you police that sort of idiotic violence? It's hideous.
Robustly, firmly, and sometimes at the end of a barrel of a gun, because they're the kind of things that these people would only understand. Be under no illusion, we are in a fight for the soul of the nation, for the high streets, for people to be able to walk down the high streets. It's that big a problem, and it's got to be joined up thinking by suitably resourced police, training standards, immigration, border force, and much, much more. They've got to work together. We need more of them. We need more funding. I kid you not. We are in a battle for the state of our nation.
And there's got to be the political will, and we cannot be called racist when these are the buildings which are being focused upon, when they need to be targeted. Peter Blexley, thank you so much for joining me. Thanks, Peter. Good night. I was going to talk to my panel about this, but we've got another guest waiting because obviously the show has been disrupted slightly by this press conference. But hold that thought, guys, because I do want to discuss that story with you. But let's talk now about the fact that the Archbishop of Canterbury has addressed the House of Lords today, criticising those who misuse religious identity to intimidate and divide. Here we go.
The work of integration has never been more urgent. We have witnessed a deeply concerning deterioration in inter-community relations. I therefore welcome the commitment in the gracious speech to do more to protect the Jewish communities following the recent appalling attacks. And in doing so, I wish to assure both Jewish and Muslim communities of my support as they face the unacceptable rise in hate crime, in intimidation and hostility. The Church of England has long held that the right of all people to practice their faith without fear must be protected. We have also seen religious identity misused to intimidate and divide. Let us be clear, to follow Jesus Christ is to love your neighbour as yourself.
That's Dame Sarah Mullally there, the relatively new Archbishop of Canterbury. And of course, her speech comes after hundreds of thousands of protesters filled the streets of London this weekend at the Unite the Kingdom and pro-Palestinian marches, which took place simultaneously. Joining me now is President Donald Trump's pastor, Mark Burns, to discuss this issue, Mark, of religious hatred dividing people. We're seeing it in countries all across the world. It feels very febrile. We've just seen this shooting in San Diego today, which appears to have racial and potentially religious undertones. How do we stop this? I can't see how it's going to get any better, Mark.
Well, that's one of the reasons why, I formulated spiritual diplomats. And spiritual diplomats are a group of imams, rabbis, Christian leaders, Hindu leaders, Buddhists from all over the world that come together with one ideal in mind, and that is to stand for peace and to speak for the voiceless. Until we have more dialogue like that, because again, I'm a strong Christian. There's no question whatsoever about my faith and my conviction, and nobody would be able to change that. This whole nature of the President Trump's golden statue that I presented this couple of weeks ago has just made a whole bunch of noise all over the world, as though we worship Donald Trump and this golden statue. That's so far from the truth. My conviction in the Lord Jesus Christ is strong. But having said that, Jesus made it very clear that the two greatest commandments is, number one, to love God with all your heart and all your mind. And the second greatest commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. So Christianity should never be used to justify, exclusion or hostility. Again, that's where slavery came in the United States of America. Christianity was used to justify slaves, African Americans being slaves, African Americans not being able to read and to learn. And so it is a danger thing when people start using religious rhetoric to create hostility. I do believe Great Britain is a Christian nation. It was founded on Judeo-Christian principles, just like the United States of America. But I do not believe that you have to use Christianity or religious rhetoric to cause divide or hate amongst people who may not believe what we believe, but they are good citizens of the country and they desire to make life better. But those immigrants must respect the sovereignty of that nation, the culture of that nation. They must assimilate to that nation and not change that nation to what they may have left from a former country.
Now that last bit will very much warm the hearts of some of our viewers, Mark, because there is a fear that people who come to the UK, and I think it's fairly evidential that this happens in some communities, don't want to amalgamate amongst the local community. They don't want to integrate, and therefore we have a country which ends up being quite ghettoised. Would you like to see leaders be more explicit in encouraging, somehow forcing the melding of communities that disagree on religion, let's say, for instance, or just have different culture? How do we do that, though?
Well, you know, a national sovereignty should never become, you know, an excuse for hatred. But securing borders is necessary. Having real conversations about who enters a nation and why they're entering a nation is extremely important. I mean, the reality of it is you cannot have a bunch of immigrants who come to a nation and desire to change the culture or the sovereignty of that nature to fit their desires more. That's not coming into a nation. That's trying to change a nation. And I think that's what people are having an issue. It's not that they have an issue with their faith. They have an issue with trying to change the culture of a nation, and weak immigration policies makes it easier to do that. That's why President Trump has put a stop to the weak immigration policies here in America, because we were seeing the very same things that are happening here. So this is not an attack on a religion. This is an attack on culture. And so, again, if a person of any faith desires to come to the UK, be a proud, a member of Great Britain. Be a proud member to His Majesty the King and to the culture of Great Britain. That has made that a great and powerful nation. But don't come to change the culture and to challenge Christians and to challenge other citizens of Great Britain because they are Christians, and to try to force others to believe what you believe or to assimilate into your ideology. That's absolutely wrong, because Great Britain is a Christian nation.
Okay, Mark, very well put. Mark Burns there, President Trump's pastor. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Now, London is waking up after tens of thousands gathered for rival protests across the capital, with dozens arrested during a huge policing operation to prevent clashes. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Let's go now to the weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. Another day of showers today. Still pretty fresh, but warmer than yesterday. There is a risk of thunderstorms this afternoon, particularly across eastern areas of the UK. Now, this band of rain from overnight pushes into more northeastern areas. So it's going to be quite a damp day for the far north and east of Scotland. Behind that, it turns clearer for a time, but also plenty of showers will develop. Some of these quite heavy, bringing a risk of thunder as well as hail, so please keep an eye on them. You likely want some sort of cover if you're heading out. But it's going to be a little bit of a warmer day, temperatures climbing to the higher teens for most of us. That upward trend in the temperatures continues through the rest of this week, but for the time being, this evening still looks pretty damp, particularly across north and eastern areas, where these showers will continue through the rush hour and through the early parts of the evening. Plenty of showers still across parts of Northern Ireland. It will turn a little bit drier for some central areas, but there's still a risk of some showery rain across the southwest, some quite brisk southwesterly winds as well. They continue through the night, so it's going to be a relatively mild night overnight. Plenty of cloud around, showers pushing in from the south and west into longer spells of rain. It's not going to be quite as heavy, the rain, overnight. There'll be quite a lot of cloud around and some rain on and off through the night. So it does make for a mild night. Temperatures 10, 11, 12 degrees by the time you wake up on Wednesday morning. So pretty mild start to the day. A little bit of a drier day to come on Wednesday as well. We're starting to see higher pressure building in for more southern areas. We'll continue to see further wet weather pushing in from more north and western areas, but as you can see here, the showers are nowhere near as heavy on Wednesday. So I think for most of us, we should see a little bit more sunshine and dry weather, and as a result, temperatures a touch higher, touching 20 degrees in the south and east. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Welcome back. So you might have seen it online. It's gone extremely viral today. This was a brawl that broke out at a restaurant in the Navy Yard neighborhood in Washington, D.C. It's at a place called a Chipotle restaurant. We have them in the UK as well. It was on Friday evening, we believe, and the scenes were published on social media. If you haven't seen it, it genuinely is quite shocking. Have a quick look. Really shocking. There's so much shocking about that footage. We're going to discuss it in just a minute. No arrests have been announced, we believe, which is incredible. Police have said witnesses reported one group of juveniles were inside the establishment when another group entered and a fight broke out immediately. Both groups fled prior to the officers' arrival. No injuries were reported, which is remarkable because they were hitting each other over the head with chairs. This was US Attorney Jeanine Pirro at a press conference this afternoon here in DC.
The taxpayers who were footing the bill by extra policing, cleaning up damaged property, suffering the effects of these illegal gatherings, whether it be noise or fights or robberies or chaos, are done. Starting now, parents, you're paying the bills. And if you know where your teen is and what your teen is doing, and you allow them to continue their conduct and continue to allow them to flourish, then we're going to prosecute you.
She is amazing, that woman, US Attorney Jeanine Pirro. She's saying that, like, if this is your kid, you're going to pay for this. And it's a real change of kind of tone in a way. Let's turn now to Michael Gould, former National Guardsman and New York Police Department police officer. This footage, Michael, I think we have it from another angle as well, because there was a guy with his two young kids trying to protect them. They were just in there having some chicken and chips on a Saturday night. It's just awful, Friday night. What do you see when you see kids behaving like that, Michael?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for having me. So it is alarming. This was in a nice neighborhood. It's a family restaurant. The Attorney General is absolutely correct. Something has to be done. These random acts of violence is a confluence of several factors. Number one, the warm weather, social media, permissive parenting, and a very lax and liberal court system. So teenagers, 16 years old and under, they're not criminally responsible for very few things except very serious crimes like murder, robbery, and rape. Things like this, there's no criminality here. And so, of course, the parents have to be responsible for this. This is damage. Look at this. Restaurant lost money. As you said, there was families dining in there. They're sitting down having some lunch or dinner, and this breaks out in such a random, spontaneous moment. And it's going to be worse as the warmer the weather and summer goes. And it's really permissive parenting and a liberal court system that I think contribute greatly to this.
I went down there this afternoon and spoke to some people. We'll play you what they said in just a moment, Michael. But we're seeing this in DC start to happen. We're seeing it all over the country, all over the world, sorry, in fact. Groups of kids. And do you know what was most disturbing for me? Well, you've got two children, well, effectively they're children, they're probably under 18, hitting each other with a high chair, a child's high chair. It's so disturbing. And then you've got the crowds outside with the phones, filming everything, laughing, thinking it's funny. I mean, that kid could have been killed by that. It's not an exaggeration to say that you could have walked away with a brain injury at the very least. It's a miracle that nobody was injured.
Yeah, I completely agree. And this is, it's a concern for law enforcement because their hands are tied, truthfully. There's not much you can do with a teenager. You can't really take them into custody and arrest them. Some of them, they're adjudicated in juvenile court, which is analogous to a slap on the wrist. There is no criminality. So the parent should have to pay for the damages, at least civilly. There should be some civil consequences. And it's nothing new. You know, teenage rebellious behavior is true across all countries. But when it elevates to this level of violence and then gets posted on social media, and then it's reenacted in other places. So it's going to be a tough, long, hot summer, I will tell you, in Washington, D.C., and where I am sitting right now in New York City. It's going to be a tough summer.
Yeah. Michael, let's just have a look at what some people said to me on the streets today about what causes this. Have a quick look.
Sure.
I think parents do have a responsibility to understand where their kids are, what their kids are doing. But I think the government and the city as well needs to provide programming and opportunities for our young people.
I wouldn't say it's typical. It's just, I'm not sure what's going on with some of the young people today. A little lack of respect.
Yeah, we spoke to one guy who was saying the trouble is there's not enough for these teenagers to do, and they're not kept occupied.
There's plenty for them to do. They just don't know how to do it. You know, I grew up drinking water out of a hose and playing in the backyard, playing kickball and wiffle ball and stuff like that. So, yeah, they're good kids. They just need some good direction, that's all.
They don't live around here. So what they do is they meet up on social media, and they all meet up in one spot, and they don't even live in the area.
In the Navy Yard area, unfortunately, it has become something that happens regularly. I think there's a whole host of issues, you know, social issues, financial issues, educational issues, opportunities for our young people. I don't think they have a lot of opportunities.
You know, some of it is issue with the city. You know, the city is not creating enough opportunity for the kids. And then some of it is what's going on with the president. You know, the structure that we have now is that it's kind of oppressive. So what do they have to do with the energy?
What would your parents have done if you'd behaved like that?
Oh, it'd be a wrap. I probably wouldn't even be breathing right now.
Michael, you hear a lot of sympathy from people there for these kids. They haven't got enough to do. They need occupying. It's President Trump's fault because everyone's oppressed. Don't they just need really firm boundaries?
Of course, of course. So they can say that because they weren't in the restaurant. You know, was an old saying here in New York City, and you know, the definition of a conservative is a liberal who's been robbed in Central Park, and then people change their. So of course, kids can volunteer. There's many outlets to do things. Volunteerism at hospitals. There's all types of social activities that kids can get involved with, whether they do or not. Factually, when I was a kid, I chose not to. But these things are available. They don't have to be funded by taxpayers. Volunteerism is a very big and wholesome activity that children, teenagers, and adults should be involved in. There's plenty of opportunity to do that. Stay out of hitting people over the head with chairs is absurd.
Yeah. That's awful. Michael, thank you so much. Michael Gould, former National Guardsman and New York Police Department police officer. Let me talk to my panel about this. I feel so depressed about so much of the news tonight, particularly in relation to young people. Laurie, when you see that footage there of those absolute, I can't use the words I want to use, thugs, let's use that, let's be kind to them, let's just call them thugs. One of the guys I was talking to said they were from out of town, they came in, they deliberately came to target an area in which they don't live, they use social media to get together. Laurie, what do these kids need?
So that is true that there are a lot of meetups that they come in from other areas around here in the DC area. They come from like Prince George's County and other areas of either Virginia, Maryland, and come into the city. But there's also of course, there's parts of DC that need reform as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump's going to start, you know, bringing more National Guard out there. But in all seriousness, I do not tolerate any of that crap that we saw on that. If I see even large groups of young kids anymore, I literally, if I run as fast as I can, if I see them in the metro, if I see them walking in the streets, if I see them anywhere, because I know that they're going to be up to no good, and they do some of these like flash mob type aggressive behaviors like that. I carry mace with me everywhere in the city, and it becomes a problem sometimes when you go into these museums and places where there's mags, you know, security, like at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. They would have taken that from me, but they didn't check things like that there. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. My point being is that anywhere you go, you have to be observant, you have to be mindful of your situation at all times. But that does not excuse these kids that they're not just up to no good. They've actually made it a habit. Like, it's fun. They post it on social media. Some people are actually making money off of this crap.
Yeah.
Ev, I don't know if you know about that or not. Making money off of violently attacking other people. And the fact that you cannot bring your kids or yourself somewhere, anywhere, where you feel that you are in a threatening situation, and that there is no law enforcement that is there that can be able to respond in a quick way to be able to keep you and your family safe. None of this should be tolerated. And I don't agree with any of those people that you interviewed, by the way. You might be surprised at my stance on this. I was raised by parents that I volunteered from the time I was 10 years old until I was out of high school. Even then, I volunteer still now as an adult. My point being is that I had a job also from the time before I was even legally old enough to work. I was doing things like volunteering. I was working. I was joining clubs. I was doing extracurricular activities. I was working on things that were really productive, and I wasn't joining groups to be fighting one another. And I say that because there are kids that don't even want to work. There are kids that think that certain jobs out there are beneath them.
Absolutely,
they shouldn't have
but
to go do this kind of work out there that other people do.
Do you know what you also had? Sorry, I want to get everyone, but you know what you also had, Laurie? You had boredom. You had boredom, and unfortunately we now have a generation of young kids, Adam, do you agree? They're never bored because they've always got a phone in their hand addicting them to the next clip, the next clip, the next clip, the next clip. We've messed up a generation with tech and social media and phones. Adam?
No, I want to just remind people about what we see in Clapham just a few months ago. You know, unruly mobs.
Very similar.
Unruly mobs going round. You know, you had families barricaded in shops. Mayor didn't want to say anything about that, did he? Oh no, because it was the wrong demographic that were doing it. And unfortunately, we're seeing that there. You know, many of those look from the black community, and you know, we have a problem there that many may be lone. You know, have lone parents. We have soft sentencing in this country as well, soft schooling now. Teachers are not able to discipline kids in school. We have a Labour government that is relaxing sentencing across the board. If you get a sentence under 3 years now, they've given judges the power to suspend that. You know, if you get a 12-month sentence, you're definitely not going away. There is no deterrent for anyone, and especially in big cities now, you get big unruly groups like that. They know they're going to get away with it. In Clapham, I don't think hardly any of them were arrested either. There'd be no consequences for the action. And as you said about with TikTok, right, you know, you get views, you get clout from doing things like that. And TikTok doesn't take down these videos. So social media is playing a part. But for me, it's bad parenting, it's bad teachers, it's bad police, and it's bad sentencing, and that is the problem. We're allowing this just to explode. We need, you know, to get harsher from the bottom to the top, and our London mayor needs to start calling things like that out, you know, and not putting his head in the sand.
And does it matter, Mac, that these are mainly black kids? It's relevant that these are all black boys that we saw fighting there predominantly. Look, DC is 50% black, just to be clear. The population here is 50% black. That area has a lot of black families living in it. So I don't want to say this is just purely a racial profiling issue. There are more black boys in Washington, DC than there are in the UK. But what's going on culturally there, Matt?
Yeah, there's no race that has monopoly on crime. But
exactly.
Look, the truth is, look, in the Navy Yard area, I was there about 4 days ago. I was in a CVS around 8 a.m. in the morning, and what I believe was a teenager came in and stole a box of Kleenex. And the people working there at that CVS were just so used to it. And you know, the problem you've had here is not just had parents who failed to parent. You know, you've also had obviously kids who've been out of control, but on top of that, a local government in Washington D.C. and governments in other places around the world as well who have not enforced the law. And thankfully, we have a U.S. attorney right now in Washington, D.C., who's enforcing the law. And she's also saying to parents, you know what? If you support this behavior, you drop your kid off after curfew, you support this behavior, you're going to be held accountable as well, not just your child. So it comes down to law enforcement being empowered. You know, you go around the country, particularly under President Biden, in my view, you had law enforcement who is not empowered to arrest people for committing crimes. In Washington, D.C., over the past couple of years, you had a local government that did not empower police officers to enforce the law. Now you have a U.S. attorney and a president in the White House who's enforcing the law and empowering law enforcement to do exactly that. That is critical, not just in the United States, but obviously in the UK as well. I think that's a critical component of all this.
You mentioned curfew, Matt. There's actually in this area of Navy Yard, because it's also where Ben Leo and I live, and Ben the cameraman. We all live down there. It's very nice actually most of the time when it's not kicking off in Chipotle. It's actually a lovely area. It's very much up and coming. You get more for your money down there. What do you make of it all when you see those pictures, Matt?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm not interested in the colour of the skin of these miscreants, of these thugs. I don't care what their skin colour is. I want law enforcement to clamp down, because that sort of antisocial behaviour terrorises communities. What we saw in Clapham a couple of months ago was absolutely appalling. I just want to correct Adam on something. He said the mayor had nothing to say about it. In fact, Mayor Khan, Mayor of London, said the scenes we saw in Clapham earlier this week were utterly unacceptable. Not only did they spread fear in the local community, but assaulting and intimidating hard-working retail staff and police officers are serious offences. The culprits will face the full force of the law.
Did he call out the demographic of those involved, Matt? No, he didn't.
So what do you mean, did he call out the demographic? The demographic,
it was 95% of people were non-white.
Of those people is irrelevant. What matters is the criminality. And Mayor Khan called out that criminality in no uncertain terms, and quite rightly so. We've got some social misbehaviour, antisocial behaviour in our area of central London. And let me tell you, and I'm not going to mention the skin colour because, as I say, it's irrelevant. Let me tell you, it only takes actually 1 or 2 people on a street to cause absolute mayhem and hold the law-abiding citizenry almost to hostage. Just on the weekend, we had a couple of teenagers playing football on our narrow road where lots of cars come down. It's highly aggressive and intimidating because they know that their ball might hit a car. Never mind the moving car, might hit a stationary car. So I went out there and I said to them, this is totally unacceptable. You've already been warned by the police once. I'm putting you on video, and I'm not going to waste police time right now because there are some serious thugs coming to London in all directions this weekend. But let me tell you, this is not acceptable. Antisocial behaviour needs to be taken unbelievably seriously.
I want to leave everyone on the cliffhanger, Matt. We've got to go to the weather, but hold that cliffhanger. We'll find out what happened in just a minute after your weather. Here it is.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Another day of showers today. Still pretty fresh, but warmer than yesterday. There is a risk of thunderstorms this afternoon, particularly across eastern areas of the UK. Now, this band of rain from overnight pushes into more northeastern areas. So it's going to be quite a damp day for the far north and east of Scotland. Behind that, it turns clearer for a time, but also plenty of showers will develop. Some of these quite heavy, bringing a risk of thunder as well as hail, so please keep an eye on them. You likely want some sort of cover if you're heading out. But it's going to be a little bit of a warmer day, temperatures climbing to the higher teens for most of us. That upward trend in the temperatures continues through the rest of this week, but for the time being, this evening still looks pretty damp, particularly across north and eastern areas where these showers will continue through the rush hour and through the early parts of the evening. Plenty of showers still across parts of Northern Ireland. It will turn a little bit drier for some central areas, but there's still a risk of some showery rain across the southwest, some quite brisk southwesterly winds as well. They continue through the night, so it's going to be a relatively mild night overnight. Plenty of cloud around, showers pushing in from the south and west into longer spells of rain. It's not going to be quite as heavy, the rain overnight. There'll be quite a lot of cloud around and some rain on and off through the night. So it does make for a mild night. Temperatures 10, 11, 12 degrees by the time you wake up on Wednesday morning. So pretty mild start to the day. A little bit of a drier day to come on Wednesday as well. We're starting to see higher pressure building in for more southern areas. We'll continue to see further wet weather pushing in from more north and western areas. But as you can see here, the showers are nowhere near as heavy on Wednesday. So I think for most of us, we should see a little bit more sunshine and dry weather. And as a result, temperatures a touch higher, touching 20 degrees in the south and east. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Bowl. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis in the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there. With the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. A very good morning to you in the UK. Good evening here in America. So police are saying that 2 teenage suspects were found dead inside a car from apparently self-inflicted wounds after that shooting at the Islamic Center in San Diego. Chief of Police Scott Wall gave an update to the media just moments ago, and he started the press conference by describing a report that the force had got from a mother worried about her suicidal son.
About 9:42 this morning, we received a call of a runaway juvenile. After speaking with the mom began to piece together bits and pieces of information over an extended period of time. The information that she was gathering and conveying to us began to elevate the threat level that we were perceiving with this information. She believed her son was suicidal, and she began to share information that several of her weapons were missing. Her vehicle was missing, in addition to her son. She also said that her son was with a companion, and that they were dressed in camo, and that is not consistent with what we would typically see from somebody that is suicidal.
So let's get the latest on this. There's a theme joining the show tonight. It's about crime, young people, and who takes responsibility for them. Matt Stadlen was telling us a story just before we went to the weather, and we will come back to Matt to hear the end of what happened when he tackled some teenagers. I know I left you on a bit of a cliffhanger there. Let's talk now, though, to retired NYPD detective David Sarney. David, it's a really awful story, this, today, out of San Diego. A mother knew that her son had gone missing. She knew he'd taken guns, he'd taken a car. The panic that must have been rising within that poor woman. And then, of course, her worst fear is realised. Could have been much worse today, though, David, if we're going to look on any bright side of this situation. It sounds like there could have been many, many more lives lost. Who does the credit go to that didn't happen?
Thank you for having me. But, you know, one of the things I think about it, they had security guard, and apparently the security guard did a great job in eliminating the amount of loss of life that could have happened. That was something I was concerned about. You know, when you do active shooter situations, and unfortunately, I even talked about it to people I've been training. It's never apparently when it's going to happen, and it's going to happen. They did a great job. I mean, what the officer did, they moved on the missing juvenile. They got more information about him. They found out he was going to be, you know, once the camouflage comes in, they started using the technology we have available, the license plate readers, trying to find out where this vehicle is. And the next thing you know, there's an active shooter situation at the Islamic Center.
Wearing camouflage, David, it's sort of got all the hallmarks of very immature, clearly teenagers dressing up, playing the part of a shooter. It will be interesting to see the influences that have affected these two young boys. But what would your suspicion be about motive and how they found themselves in this awful situation?
Well, we're seeing active shooters. We see predicators about this. You know, the mother finally saw something that just rang a bell with the weapons missing. And I have to say this, most active shooter situations, even though they're juveniles, they are planned, they are plotted, they thought about this. That's why the camouflage is there. They obtained the weapons. They just decided this was the day to do it. This is something that we've seen regularly when it comes to active shooters. They are planned. We don't hear about mental disease or mental defect. These are planned events to create as much casualties, create as many casualties as possible. And that's why they went to what they consider a soft target, but hardened by a security guard that was there. But these are things we see, unfortunately, way too often. We're seeing these active shooters are this age and sometimes younger that are plotting these things. And parents really have to be cognizant. When you see something, say something. And if these indicators come into play about depression, is fixated toward other shooters, developing that that hate rhetoric, which is apparently what he wrote when the mom saw that. See these as indicators and get the help they need, which means get law enforcement involved as soon as possible. You know, education is one thing, but when these things come to play, get law enforcement involved so we can at least do what we can to maybe get the weapons away from these kids and maybe stop before it happens. And in a way, this stopped before it got any worse.
Yeah, it could certainly have been. David, thank you so much. Retired NYPD detective there, David Sarney. Thank you for joining us. I'm just looking at the inbox here a little bit with you all getting in touch. We appreciate all your messages this evening. People want to know what happened to your story, Matt Stadlen. If you're just joining us, I've got Matt Terrell here, Laurie Watkins, Adam Brooks and Matthew Stadlen in the studio in London as well. Matthew, we were talking about who's responsible when these children are misbehaving, these young adults, these juveniles as they call them routinely here in America. Just recap what happened to you, Matt, and let us know the denouement of your episode.
Yeah, well, they back down, these guys. I mean, it's never fun, is it? Because you do hear of dads, middle-class dads, working-class dads who get involved and try to stop what they can see unfolding before their eyes is a totally unacceptable situation, and they get stabbed. Now, I'm not saying that was going to ever be the case in this scenario, but of course you've got to be careful, and yet you also don't want to be intimidated by anyone. That's just a rule of thumb for me. And so when you see people effectively, even in sometimes a low-level way, terrorising a local community, it's in my personality to stand up against it. I think what's fascinating, and it's a really interesting area of law that we've started to touch on this evening, this idea of holding parents more responsible. And it looks like we're edging towards that in the UK. I share some of your reservations about it, Bev, and I don't think parents should actually be criminally punished for the crimes of their children. But if a parent knows that their child is doing something criminal, they absolutely then should have, in my view, a legal responsibility to inform the authorities. It looks like that might be what happened in this horrific case in San Diego, although I think the individual concerned was an adult. But of course, parents at that point, I think, do have a responsibility. Interesting, there's still a bill going through Parliament where adults who are working in certain areas of responsibility with children, if this bill passes, and I don't think it's yet passed, will then have they will be mandated to report known or suspected child sexual abuse. And I think there could be some overlap there with how we treat parents of delinquent children who are causing the sort of disgraceful scenes we saw in Clapham here, and also that we've seen over in the United States that we've been discussing this morning.
Yeah, what about the parents of Axel Rudabakana? If those parents had actually done their parental duty, we might not have seen those poor young girls murdered. So I think, look, I would not want parents to be solely responsible for the actions of their kids. I've got a distant family member that has been in crime his whole life, and his parents are the nicest people you ever meet, and good parents too. Sometimes you get a bad egg, but it's how, you know, with Axel Rudabakana, I'm assuming they knew how dangerous he was, and there were certain things that come out in that trial that could have saved lives. And I think parents should be responsible when they know that their kids are going to do something bad. 100%.
Just for my American guests, when Adam talks about Axel Rudabakana, this was a Taylor Swift dance concert in Southport in the northwest of the UK, and this kid of Rwandan descent, even though I think he was born in Wales, his parents were immigrants from Rwanda, and he went in with knives and caused death, chaos within, and killed 3 young little girls and injured nursery teachers at a Taylor Swift dance concert on a sunny August midweek day, and it was just tragic, and it tore the country. It really did cause such a problem, because there were riots on the streets of the UK in the aftermath of that, because people were reacting, I think, in a sense, to this idea that we've allowed people to come into our country that bring perhaps trauma with them, bring the brutality that they've seen and enact. But as it turns out, this kid was born in Wales anyway, as it is, and was raised in Wales, but raised by a father who had been involved in the genocidal times in Rwanda, and it was a flashpoint that caused riots. And in fact, Keir Starmer was very quick out of the blocks and blamed the right-wingers for this, and some people ended up in prison, and the tail of that has been very, very long. But the inquest just recently, as Adam mentioned, was where the judge that we just saw in the trial, actually, of Axel Rudabakana, said that the parents knew, Matt Terrell, that they knew that his behaviours had been erratic and dangerous, and they didn't feel empowered to do something about it. But are you comfortable with parents being held accountable?
Well, I think it's a balancing act, right? So I think the U.S. Attorney in Washington, D.C., which she rolled out, I think makes sense, and is saying, look, you know, essentially, if you are participating and supporting your children in doing things that are illegal or heinous or violent, you know, I go back to the example, if you're intentionally dropping your child off in Washington, D.C., where there's a curfew, and you drop them off after curfew, then yes, I think you need to be held accountable. If you're handing your child a gun, you know, to go commit a heinous act, you should be held accountable. So I think it needs to be within reason. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, if you're a parent, you can't control everything your child does. And so I think it's an and not or approach. I don't think this is something where it's got to be a very holistic approach. And I don't think, whether it's in the UK or the US, where they're really examining, both countries are examining how to approach this with parents, I think it needs to be done very methodical. Because what's to say a child goes out and does a heinous act, and as a parent, you did everything you could to raise that child right, Just because you did everything right doesn't mean that child's going to do something always right. But with that said, I do think parents need to parent. And I think right now parents need to take control when their kids are on the phones too much. That can be difficult to do, obviously. Easier said than done. But I think get back to basics. I mean, we talked about boredom earlier. It's okay to be bored sometimes. As a kid growing up, I was bored a lot, all right? But I also got involved and engaged, and I had parents who were involved and engaged in my life. They got me involved in sports. They were there for me when they could be. My parents worked very hard, worked long hours. When they could, we sat around the dinner table. It's the little things that add up, and I think parents do need to take responsibility. But I think we need to take a very holistic approach to how we apply the law to parents on this and how we hold them accountable or not.
Isn't it funny? This is one of those. I brought together 4 of the most argumentative panelists here, and we're all actually reached a consensus and an agreement that there is a kind of crisis in parenting and that everybody needs to do more.
Yeah, well, I was going to say specifically as it relates to parents being charged for crimes that their children commit. If laws go into effect, which in some states here in the United States of America, there are absolutely laws that are in effect, and I will give you guys, just to inform some of your viewers about some things over the last few years that have happened here in the United States because of these explosion in gun violence related cases. In the state of Georgia, for example, there was a 14-year-old, Colin Gray. His father was charged along with him for second-degree murder because his father had provided him with the weapon. Another case was James and Jennifer Crumbly. Their son Ethan Crumbly was charged with a mass shooting at his high school. They absolutely provided him with that weapon. They gave him the gun,
a bit different,
even though he had already expressed suicidal ideations and committing violence against some of his fellow students. The school was involved with that because there had been so many reports. The school didn't do enough as well. The school was being charged civilly and possibly criminally about that. All of these cases are by a court of law. That's how I believe. If there's a law that is put into place, that is written, that there are consequences for people that should have spoken up, especially parents that not only didn't say anything, but then gave and provided and purchased a gun for their son or daughter or minor in this case that should never have had one because they were showing signs of mental illness or struggles. In those cases, Bev, those parents absolutely were charged, and I believe that they were charged lawfully and willfully in those cases because they should have done the opposite of what they did. And in these instances, kids and individuals and adults were murdered.
Yeah.
But Bev, can I just jump in there? Can I just jump in very briefly?
Just let me take it. Just let me. No, because I want to come back to this issue. We've got so much of this to talk about, but I do want to come back to this issue. Whether it matters, whether these are predominantly black kids in DC, and whether it was predominantly black kids in Clapham. Does it matter?
It doesn't matter.
Do you know? It's not about melanin. Actually, it's not about what colour your skin is, but it is about. One guy said to me on the street. A black guy said to me on the street today, we need to have a conversation about black culture. He said black music. He said, don't get me started on the music that these boys are listening to, which is depraved, it is violent, it is misogynistic, it is homophobic, it's encouraging violence. It genuinely, and these kids have got this on a doom loop on their phones. They're watching.
I listened to R&B and rap my whole entire life growing up, and I'm sitting here at a TV news desk. So my point is, you can listen to that music, been talking for a long time. You don't go out and commit crimes.
Yeah, you don't. But couple that with a lack of a dad, a school with no boundaries, and you've been told for decades that you're the victim, that your life's going to be tough for you because you're black, life's going to be difficult for you. You are a victim here. You'll always be a victim. The black community need to have an honest conversation about what that's done to a generation of violent young men, Adam.
Bev, I'll speak because I work with many in the black community with my anti-knife crime campaigns and my work. My boxing coach, who is a dear friend of mine as well, mentors young kids, and he tells me to keep banging the drum about the black statistics with knife crime in London. Black males make up probably 8% of London, yet they are responsible for 53% of London knife crime. That is a disproportionately terrible problem within that community. And I work with charities, a charity called the Wickers charity that deals mainly with the black community with this and try and help out. Now, this is a terrible problem, and it's not just not poverty. There must be some sort of cultural thing here, lack of parental guidance, lack of father figures in their lives. But this is such a disproportionate problem within the black community. And look, I'm tackling this because I don't want anyone to lose their lives. People might go, Adam, don't bring up the black stats because it makes us look bad. Very few people tell me that. The majority want black lives saved. And by talking about it, by highlighting it, maybe a community can come together and the elders in their community, the father figures, can turn around and say, look, stop killing each other, because most of the victims of black perpetrators in knife crime are black. So look, people like me trying to make this better, trying to put it out there, saves black lives. There's nothing racist about telling the truths. Stats can't be racist, Bev.
Matt Stadlen?
Well, we've spilled over into knife crime. I thought we were talking about antisocial behaviour. I mean, it is true that the Operation Trident was set up, I think, by the Met some time ago. I don't know whether it's still in existence or not, to deal with black-on-black shootings. So, look, I'm not someone who thinks that we shouldn't take an interest if there are particular issues within particular communities, but I think we've got to be very careful. We're talking about antisocial behaviour. Just look at what happened on the weekend in the Celtic game. The unbelievable excitement against Hearts, where they nick the title at the very end. My friend Martin O'Neill, the manager of Celtic, unbelievable managerial story, but utterly disgraceful scenes with so many of those Celtic fans pouring onto the pitch after the game. Massively antisocial. People like Adam could have been there. He's a football fan like me. We could have been there with our young children. Or you look at the Old Firm game a month or so ago in Glasgow also, of course, where you had the Rangers fans spilling onto the pitch, some of them in balaclavas and some Celtic fans spilling on. We don't then say, do we need to have a conversation in white communities about antisocial behaviour? Antisocial behaviour spills right across racial, cultural and religious lines.
We've talked about
totally different things.
But we've talked about football hooliganism repeatedly since the 1970s.
Or maybe we need to talk about it some more because it's still alive and unwell, Bev.
I know, but I'm sure it is, but listen, that's my point. It's not about how much melanin you have in your skin, and it's not about it when we talk about black boys. We happen to call them black boys because that is what they are. That's how we're identifying them, because we shouldn't be clumsy about language. When we're talking about football fans, I don't care what colour they are. It doesn't matter what colour their skin is when they're a football fan. That's the point. We too quickly get prickly about.
Why does it matter what colour skin they are when it comes to antisocial behaviour? I've just given you an example. I wasn't going to mention the skin colour. It happens that this bloke's skin and his mate's skin is white. But as I say, antisocial behaviour, anyone who's experienced it will know that it cuts right across all divides in society. My point is, of course we call it out where we see it. Of course the rape gangs that scourge the lives of young, some Pakistani, yes, young white girls and women. Those are evil, and anyone who didn't act on them because they thought they were going to be called racist for acting on them, that's an absolute disgrace and dereliction of duty. My point isn't that we don't tackle criminals when they're black or Asian or Pakistani or whatever they are. My point is we police without fear or favour, and we go after the criminals, and let's not get sidetracked by skin colour.
But they don't, because when they are black or brown, they don't police like that. They police differently. We've got two-tier Britain. We see scenes like Clapham happening all the time. I go up London, you see, you know, groups of black boys, masks on. Why is that allowed anymore? Why are we allowing gangs just to roam the streets and intimidate? We've got to call it out, and people within the black community want me to call it out because they don't want this bad name. They
you're
do
seriously
not want that.
telling me that the Met Police in my hometown of London are not going after black criminals because they're somehow PC or they're somehow woke?
In some
That's
respects,
absolute nonsense. It dishonours. It really dishonours the brave men and women who police our city, because let me tell you, they will go after people whether they're black, white, brown or whatever they are.
Yeah, but they have a valid fear. They have a valid fear of being accused of being racist.
No, they don't, Bev. It's not a valid fear.
They do. I know police officers, Matt.
Because you see it. You see it. I've seen black kids get pulled up on the streets in London or here, and as soon as they're spoken to by a police officer, they will say, "You're just being racist. You're talking to me because I'm racist." And that comes back to my earlier point that we have a whole generation who are primed to see their lives as difficult because of their skin colour, and they've been told you will be a victim of racism your whole life, you're going to have to be better than everybody. Not necessarily. Just do your best. Stop looking to blame somebody else. Take personal responsibility for your behaviour. Don't throw chairs across a cafe on a Saturday night when a father's there with his kids. Just that we've got no sense that a human being, a young person, can be responsible, Matt, for their own behaviour. We're not telling them. They're always looking to blame somebody else when their life is rubbish.
Yeah, look, I think we've entered a society, just in general, where we have a younger generation here that points to blame. I mean, they can't get a job, they point the blame.
Yeah.
You know, they
get arrested,
point the blame. It's not just younger generation. We saw people in that interview blaming President Trump, blaming the city because they didn't have enough activities. Listen, when I was growing up, it wasn't on the city to create activities for me. It was on my parents to parent, but it's also on me to do what was right. It was on me to get involved in local neighborhood games. It didn't cost any money, by the way. You know, a lot of times we talk about the financial and socioeconomic impact and difference. You know, certainly that does matter in terms of dynamics in families at times, no question about that. But look, you know, a lot of what I did growing up didn't cost any money. It didn't cost money to go play in the backyard or to go do neighborhood games. And you know what? We weren't bothering anybody. We weren't out there.
Where did you get your sense of what was right and wrong from?
You know, you get it from your parents, number one, but you also get it from listening and being patient and recognizing that, you know, the biggest problem we have right now is that parents are competing with what their kids are seeing online, what their kids are seeing on their iPhones, what their kids are seeing just in general on TV or on a podcast. You know, a lot of kids right now, sadly, aren't being parented by parents. They're being parented by online platforms. And when I was growing up as well, you know, get off watching TV. But TV is not what, you know, the internet is today or what TikTok is today. And I'm not blaming these platforms. I'm simply saying parents have to be more attuned to what's going on, they have to recognize that they are competing with these other platforms, and they need to be ensuring that they're putting discipline and character and good judgment, those kind of values in their kids' lives. And a lot of what we do see, frankly, if you're going to point the blame, there is some blame with parents because you have a lot of parents who are not hands-on. And yes, they might be busy with 2, 3, 4 jobs, and I'm empathetic to that. But when you parent and you have a kid or kids, you got to recognize that is a massive responsibility. And then beyond that, it is on the kids, though. You know, these kids are not kids, by the way. I mean, they are, technically. But we're talking, in some cases, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, 19, 20-year-olds. You know, at some point, we have to recognize these are individuals who do need to be held accountable. That's important.
But somehow, we all were raised to know what was right and what was wrong. Somehow, our parents knew what was right and what was wrong.
Yeah,
and now we've got a younger generation, and there's way too many of them that don't know what is good and what is bad behaviour.
That's just such nonsense. It's this old trope that we somehow used to live in this unbelievable society. Of course we didn't. There was terrible crime in the 1980s when I was growing up. There were awful social problems. There was rampant racism and homophobia and sexism. Please don't tell me that in past generations got it wrong. In so many ways, life is better in Britain today than it was 30, 40, 50 years ago.
You know what? There's a lot of truth to that, and I'm glad you pulled me up on that. There is a lot of truth to that. But I think where there is a difference is kids having a lack of respect. Because you're right, there used to be more racist adults, there used to be more sexist adults, the boss that would pat the bum of the secretary, you know, that we don't do that stuff anymore, and that is good. There would be adult men at football matches throwing bananas on the pitch because there was a black player. You're absolutely right to draw that distinction, and I'm glad you did that.
Not just racism, but crime generally. Not just racism. Not just racism.
Yeah, but
the streets were safer back then, Matt. I remember growing up, mate. As well, though,
in terms
feared the police growing up. These kids don't fear the police because the police when I was growing up were all 6 foot tall and looked menacing. Now, no disrespect to a lot of the police officers, especially in London, they're, you know, dumpy little things and, you know...
That is disrespectful, Adam.
I don't care if it's disrespectful.
These people know how to police. Just because they're not as strong as we are, it doesn't mean they can't police.
The truth cannot be disrespectful, Matt. We have police officers now that are overweight, they're slow, they can't run after these youths, and the youths laugh and mock them. I've seen it. I was scared of the police. You go Spain, Bev, you go Spain, I look at police, I do nothing wrong, but I look at them and I think, whoa, I better not even look at them.
Adam,
And that is why crime is less in Spain, because their police do not mess about.
The reason kids were afraid of police in the old days, Adam, is because, unlike today, there might have been a chance that the police officer would have acted unlawfully towards them. We don't want to live in a society where police officers beat up children or indeed adults.
It's respect.
Look, respect, by the way, partly comes from social media.
I can tell you that if a police officer took me home, I would be more afraid of my parents, I don't know about y'all, than I would of the police officer, especially of my father that I grew up with. Again, I don't know about y'all.
Yeah. No, you're right. I was frightened of my mum more than my dad.
My mom would say, Lori Ann, now you all know my middle name, she'd say, Lori Ann, do you want to have to tell your father about this when he comes home? And I knew, like... Holy smokes, you better.
It's no respect for police, it's no respect for teachers. I mean, we're seeing a lack. It's less fear, it's respect. I used to respect growing up teachers, police officers, authority. You don't have it today.
Yeah, and I'm a Beverly Ann, so I would get Beverly Ann. We have a Beverly Ann and a Laurie Ann. Then you knew you were in trouble if you got both names. Go on, Adam.
I've got a 16-year-old boy and he's a great kid, but if my 16-year-old boy was involved in that restaurant-type behaviour there, I would drag him down and probably get social services now. I'd drag him down that restaurant by his hair, right, and I would make him make it better. I would make him apologise. I would make him work to pay that off, that damage. Yeah. That's how I would deal with it. But unfortunately now, many parents will turn a blind eye, and that is terrible behaviour.
And Adam makes my point very effectively. Let me respond.
That's really interesting.
Let me just quickly respond. Adam makes my point. What Adam's talking about is some sort of old-school form of parenting, which I don't endorse at all. I would make my son, believe me, or my daughter, go and grovel and apologise, but I wouldn't drag them down by their hair. Let me tell you that. Where I think we've deviated unhelpfully is from what you said earlier, Bev, which is social media. Social media does have, I think, a cancerous effect on our young children and indeed 100%. Our adults in society today. And if we could focus a bit more on that. And how do you think these flash mobs happen, whether it's in Clapham or Washington, D.C. or wherever it is? They're getting together on social media, whether it's WhatsApp or other platforms.
That's how they're
That needs to be really seriously thought about. Australia have banned it, haven't they, for people below 16?
It's Snapchat. They all get together on Snapchat and they consider us grandmas for using WhatsApp. They get together on Snapchat and they organise these get-togethers. And it's awful. They've got control. They've got power. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. We're treating adults like children, and we're treating children like adults. And actually, Adam's line there about I'd probably have social services round if I dragged the kids. That is the truth about how so many parents feel. If I discipline my children properly, if I, God forbid, if I smack them, you know, then I'm going to be in trouble. The police are going to knock on my door, and that is so
Bev,
true.
What are you saying? What are you saying, Bev? You're a national TV presenter, apparently advocating violence against children. Do you seriously think that's going to help? It's not going to help anyone. She's talking about tough love. Sometimes kids need tough love.
Put your hand up here if you were smacked by your parents, even if it was just a bit of smack on the back of the legs. Put your hand up if you were.
And it shows. Look who isn't putting their hand up. It shows.
Yeah.
It sure did right there.
As a very last resort, and I'm not talking about beating the living daylights out of them, Matt. And the problem is, for those parents who could use physical discipline with their children in a measured way as a very last resort, They are frightened now.
Bev, how
to
have we
discipline their
got
kids.
away?
And do you know what that will never do? Do you know what will never do? Do you know what the law against smacking your children will never do? It will never stop people physically abusing their kids.
I'll tell you what might help.
Those parents who want to physically abuse their kids always will physically abuse their kids.
I'll tell you what might help, Bev, and that is if TV presenters and commentators don't advocate violence against children. If we seriously think that being violence against our children is going to help sort out the flash mobs in Clapham, then I'm in heaven, help us.
I am just saying that, guess what? One of the things we have to look at, we've got parents who are frightened by their own children. And we all grew up being just a little bit, exactly, we all grew up being a little bit frightened of our parents, and that's okay, because you knew that they might give you a wallop. They might not, but you knew that they might, and that sometimes was enough just to keep you on your toes.
Do you guys also remember when you used to fight with your fists? Do you remember that? No. Like, you have a scrap or a scuffle with someone, or like some words, you like, hey, and you like use your fists. You don't use guns, you don't use knives, you don't use nunchucks, machetes,
or
all these weapons, or high chairs, or what you like. And if you were scrawny or whatever,
that's why we should have boxing in schools.
And if you weren't, then you didn't.
Adam's so right. You are so right.
In schools.
That's why we need boxing in schools.
It teaches respect.
I'm not advocating violence, and I'm not encouraging any parents to go and smack their kids. I'm just
sounds like you are, Bev. We're not in the pub. We're not in the pub. We're being watched by people across.
We're not in the pub, so shut up. I'm talking. Right. So the latest developments on the conflict in the Middle East now. President Donald Trump has said that the United States is holding off on a planned attack on Iran that had been scheduled for Tuesday, citing what he described as serious negotiations taking place. Meanwhile, the American president is set to hold a top-level Situation Room meeting on the issue tomorrow. For the very latest details on this, let's speak to Middle East policy analyst Harley Littman. Harley, thank you for joining us. A bit of a gear change here from parenting and domestic politics and crime to very important international news. So, what do you think the president is going to say at his top-level Situation Room meeting tomorrow?
I think military action will resume. I think that the president is exasperated that Iran is just not serious with negotiations. And in a sense, this is actually a good outcome, because I think people who are watching the situation see that Iran is playing games. They're issuing ridiculous demands of the United States to pay reparations to Iran for the damage caused in this military conflict. And they want the United States to guarantee that America and Israel will never attack Iran again, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. So I think that even if you question why the United States went to war against Iran, we are where we are. And I think it's time for the United States to employ its full military force and try to bring this to some closure before we have serious world economic crisis occurring because of the high price of oil and other reasons.
Yeah, we've had a warning actually in the early hours of the morning here in the UK. Sorry, over in the UK in just the last couple of hours from Yvette Cooper, our Home Secretary, who's saying that actually we need to be concerned about the fact that we are going to have a food crisis because of the price of fertilizer going up. And she said it has to come through the Straits of Hormuz, our Foreign Secretary. Sorry, and so. How pressing will this become for President Trump to hear these issues from British politicians saying that British people are going to start going hungry?
No, that's a great point, and I was going to mention it. I'm glad you did. It's not just the price of oil, but as you mentioned, fertilizer, helium, so many other goods that go through the Strait of Hormuz have been blocked now for a long period of time, and it's putting huge pressure on the supply chain in Europe, as you mentioned, food in Great Britain, among other things. So it's not sustainable to continue the status quo, meaning that the United States blockades the strait by not letting Iran export oil, which is how they're getting their money to fight this war and fund their regime. And by doing so, the United States is depriving Iran of about $500 million a day, which is a very good thing. The problem is that could take months for it to finally break this regime. And no one seems to have the time or patience to be able to wait months. So the United States is going to have to do something because the pressure is building up. And I think that Iran is just trying to play for time as they do. And they're going to try to manipulate the United States. They're counting on the left in America to bail them out. If you watch the American media, the left has already said that America has lost. They're basically championing the cause of Iran, as tragic and sad as that is. They're so obsessed with hating President Trump that they can't get over their hatred. And they don't realize that while they celebrate a Trump failure, they don't realize that it would be an American failure.
We're hearing tonight, Harley, that Iran is discussing putting a $50 million, that's about £43 million bounty on President Trump's head. How realistic is that? What could the repercussions of that be?
Again, in a strange sort of way, I would welcome it only because this will only provoke the president to do what he really needs to do. I'm not in favor of a bounty on the head of anyone, certainly not President Trump. But by doing so, they're only provoking him even more. And they have tried to assassinate President Trump twice. And it may be worth reminding the viewers why we are at war with Iran. You know, not since 1979 has any nation in the world been more obsessed with destroying America and the West than Iran is. They, attacked the American Marine compound in Lebanon. They've killed hundreds of Americans. They blew up the American embassy in Beirut, and they bled America in Afghanistan and in Iraq. They trained and supported the insurgents and the fighters when America went to war in Afghanistan and Iraq, and they're responsible for a huge number of casualties. So, the list goes on. They're the center of world terrorism. What does that cost the world? It has cost the world over $1 trillion as nations have to defend themselves from terrorism, where the headquarters is from Iran. On every level you look at it, I'll add another one. Look at what they've done. The largest massacre in Persian history, murdering about 40,000 of their own people, defenseless people, shooting them, chasing them into hospitals while they're on operating tables and shooting them while they're on those tables. I mean, this is really a demonic regime that needs to be overthrown. And the United States has to do everything possible to set the conditions, because at the end of the day, it really will be up to the Iranian people. The United States could do a great deal to bringing down this regime, but at the end, the people in Iran, as difficult as it is, they need to rise up.
Okay, Harley, thank you so much. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Harley Littman there. I can't help but think that if President Trump is told there's a bounty on his head from Iran for $50 million, I think his reaction would be, is that all? I think he'll say I'm worth more than that. We're making light of it, but obviously it's a very serious situation. I think that would be his response, though, Matt, don't you? And I don't think it will bother him.
Well, I think knowing him, he would say good luck. So
yeah, quite.
I think so.
And he'd be right.
Him to do the right thing.
Right, still to come this evening on The Late Show Live, Cuba has acquired more than 300 military drones and is discussing plans to use them to attack America, according to a new report. I'm going to speak to a Cuban expert in just a moment after a very quick look at the weather. Stay with us.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. Another day of showers today. Still pretty fresh, but warmer than yesterday. There is a risk of thunderstorms this afternoon, particularly across eastern areas of the UK. Now, this band of rain from overnight pushes into more northeastern areas. So it's going to be quite a damp day for the far north and east of Scotland. Behind that, it turns clearer for a time, but also plenty of showers will develop. Some of these quite heavy, bringing a risk of thunder as well as hail, so please keep an eye on them. You likely want some sort of cover if you're heading out. But it's going to be a little bit of a warmer day, temperatures climbing to the higher teens for most of us. That upward trend in the temperatures continues through the rest of this week, but for the time being, this evening still looks pretty damp, particularly across north and eastern areas where these showers will continue through the rush hour and through the early parts of the evening. Plenty of showers still across parts of Northern Ireland. It will turn a little bit drier for some central areas, but there's still a risk of some showery rain across the southwest, some quite brisk southwesterly winds as well. They continue through the night, so it's going to be a relatively mild night overnight. Plenty of cloud around, showers pushing in from the south and west into longer spells of rain. It's not going to be quite as heavy, the rain, overnight. There'll be quite a lot of cloud around and some rain on and off through the night. So it does make for a mild night. Temperatures 10, 11, 12 degrees by the time you wake up on Wednesday morning. So pretty mild start to the day. A little bit of a drier day to come on Wednesday as well. We're starting to see higher pressure building in for more southern areas. We'll continue to see further wet weather pushing in from more north and western areas. But as you can see here, the showers are nowhere near as heavy on Wednesday. So I think for most of us, we should see a little bit more sunshine and dry weather. And as a result, temperatures a touch higher, touching 20 degrees in the south and east. Bye-bye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Very busy inbox right now. A lot of you saying, Sasha says it's the Stadlen attitude that has caused all this social aggression. People like him in their ivory towers have neutralised the police. Narrowboat girl. Well, that answers it. That was naughty, Matthew. I can't discipline you, so here's some sweets and cake. There's a good boy. I also had a marriage proposal for telling Matt Stadlen to shut up. But I've known Matt a very long time, and I'm sure he can take it with affection. I fight to have you on this show, Matt Stadlen, so I hope you don't mind when I have to give you a hard time. Right. Cuba has denied claims that it purchased more than 300 military drones and was plotting an attack on the US naval base at Guantanamo Bay after a leaked report obtained by Axios suggested the CIA believed such an operation was under discussion. According to the American news website, Cuba acquired the drones from Iran and Russia and stashed them in strategic locations across the island. Cuba's Foreign Affairs Minister, Bruno Rodriguez Parrilla, wrote in a statement, without any legitimate excuse whatsoever, the US government builds day after day a fraudulent case to justify the ruthless economic war against the Cuban people and the eventual military aggression. Meanwhile, CIA Director John Ratcliffe travelled to the nation just last week to warn officials against engaging in hostilities with the United States. Joining me now is US House candidate, former US Marine and former police officer David Burke. David, just let my British viewers know exactly what is going on here with Cuba and what this might mean for American-Cuban relations.
Yeah, so I'm down here. I live down here in South Florida. Obviously, we have a large percentage of the sort of the Cuban diaspora community, and moreover, my in-laws are Cuban who have family still on the island. So this is definitely near and dear to my heart. And every single story you hear, the plight that the Cuban people are facing, mind you, this has been in existence since the revolution, you know, came down to Cuba. So kind of what we're looking at, I guess, from a bigger picture is this is President Trump's plan to kind of control the Western Hemisphere, to know what's going on in our backyard. We saw what happened with Maduro. The Cuban regime is definitely afraid of that. And mind you, these aren't ideological radicals. They are to a degree. I think now at this point, sort of in the life cycle of this regime, they're more so criminals at the end of the day. And what they probably are trying to avoid, which they would prefer, is sort of an off-ramp. They're looking for an off-ramp, but they're posturing with these drones, and who knows what kind of drones that they have, whether they're the Shahed drones or sort of lower-level munitions. They're posturing. They know that the revolution is going to come to an end. They know that that Marco Rubio has his eyes set on the island, and that President Trump's foreign, sort of Western Hemisphere domestic policy is coming into effect.
Just tell us what life is like for people in Cuba, David. We don't hear a huge amount about it in the UK. What's the living standard like, the quality of life now?
Well, I've heard stories from my in-laws' family down there that there are stories of people that are crying on the ground when their cooking oil spills, that they ration off cooking oil, that chicken, protein is not readily available. My father-in-law always says, we're going to eat like a general tonight, because down in Cuba, the beef steak is primarily reserved for sort of the political elites. There was a story I heard that the Cuban regime interdicted a funeral procession after the body had been in a home for weeks. Before they were able to move it, and they were saying they were questioning the mourning family if they were involved in commerce. So, I understand across the pond you don't understand. It's tough to kind of hear. There's not a lot of media that goes out, and all media that goes into Cuba is largely controlled. The recent influencers, the left-wing influencers that came in from the United States, that was a state-authorized sort of tour. So they're not going to really be able to interact with real Cubans who are feeling the impact of this regime. And once again, you can speak to any member of the Cuban diaspora here in South Florida. They will tell you that they do want to see a free Cuba. Many have family back there, and they simply will not go back because of fear of reprisal.
Yeah, well, let's, I guess we have to wait and see, David, what happens now. Joining me, thank you so much for joining me this evening, US House candidate, former US Marine and former police officer David Burke. Thank you, David. Let me ask my guys here at Cuba. We know, I've sensed for a while this is on this government's hit list. Let's say hit list as a country that they want to improve. Rubio talks about it regularly, doesn't he? It should be a thriving economy. They've got amazing resources. Just the beautiful beaches that they have. They should be flying. And they are stuck in a communist past, aren't they?
Absolutely. It's all the government's fault. I mean, look, the government will not allow the people there to succeed. The people who succeed, who are Cuban, do it outside of Cuba. And that's the real problem. The truth is, the United States government right now is wanting to give the people of Cuba relief, money for relief. We're just simply saying, as the United States government, that we're not going to allow it to be given to the United States, to the Cuban government, to be the ones to disperse it. Yeah. It's going to be dispersed through a church or through a non-government entity there. That's how much distrust there is with the government of Cuba. And so, look, we'll see what takes shape here. I do think the point made earlier about how the Trump administration, I think, is really trying to ensure that our backyard, the United States' backyard, is secure. Because, look, there is an element here to recognize that this is about Cuba, but it's also about China. It's also about Iran. It's also about Russia. And Cuba has, in particular with Russia and China, had a massive partnership, and they had that as well with Venezuela. But what do? We cut off the oil line from Venezuela to Cuba. That is hurting the Cuban government right now, but it's about the Cuban people. And I think a change in government there is necessary for the people to succeed.
Does America have a right to try and change the government in Cuba, Laurie?
I would say we have a responsibility. I'm from South Florida. I grew up there. Cuba's 90 miles off the coast of my home state. And I grew up literally like watching television in the news, like as a small child, seeing stories of Cuban refugees washing up on the shores of our beaches. And I grew up right by the beach. Seeing those images, you understand at a very early age, like what immigration is. These folks are in your schools, their kids are in your classrooms, they're going to your churches, etc. Do I want to make the situation better for them? Of course I do. But the United States and Cuba has had very tenuous relationships. The Obama administration did a lot to help kind of take down a lot of those walls, and then the Trump administration came back in, I should say. Well, came in, made some changes, then came back in and tried to make some more. After the Biden administration, there were trips. People were going to Cuba as of, during the Biden administration, and Donald Trump came in again and said, basically embargoed, like, no one's allowed to travel to and from Cuba anymore. So that hurt families, that hurt people with economic, situations that they're in. But I don't know how this is going to turn around.
What's your reading of that situation?
Well, my reading is Cuba's continue to be a harbor for terrorism. I mean, that's just the truth. And look, we talk about the people of Cuba, which really matters here. They are suffering because the government will not allow them to succeed. And you look at where inflation is, you look at where the cost of chicken is and basic goods and services, it's outrageous. And I go back to, some people are trying to make this appear as though the Trump administration is doing something wrong in terms of what's taking shape there right now. And the truth is the administration has been trying to give relief, money to the people of Cuba so that they can buy food, so that they can have humanitarian relief. They're just not going to give it to the government of Cuba because the government of Cuba will take that money likely. And the truth is, it's the government of Cuba that needs to be changed. They're the ones who are responsible right now for the chaos that's been taking shape in that country. And the truth is the people of Cuba deserve better.
Yes, I think they probably do, don't they? Let me bring in my panel in the UK. As Matt and Adam, as I was just saying, that we don't really talk. Cuba isn't one of these countries that we discuss a huge amount on the political landscape of the UK. I just quite like the fact that we've got an example of what communism looks like in action, because some days I wake up and think that's exactly where our country's going, and I'm quite glad to see that it doesn't work out, Matt Stadlen.
I don't think our country is going in any one direction, Bev. I think we live in the most fractured political times of my lifetime and Adam's lifetime. We're almost identical age.
We could be brothers, Matt.
You don't realise, Bev, you've got two arch enemies sitting next to each other, a metre apart.
He's just unblocked me from Twitter.
I've unblocked him for good behaviour, but he's on parole. Listen, Bev, a serious point. We were talking about social media earlier. We were talking about social media, and it is unbelievably divisive, but also it caters for everything. It pushes people into different directions, into different echo chambers, and draws them away from the mainstream. So you've got Zach Polanski doing well from nowhere. You've got Nigel Farage, of course. He's come from somewhere. We've known him. He's been a force for decades now in our politics. And you've got Labour and the Tories really struggling and failing at the moment to hold their ground. And then you've got nationalists in charge in Scotland, you've got nationalists in charge in Wales. The result of the next election is so difficult to predict, because even in these local elections where, to their credit, for a party that's only got 8 MPs, Reform obviously did very well on those terms, but still project it nationally, and it's about 27% of the vote in those local elections. That means 73% not voting for Reform. How will people vote in the next election? It's fascinating.
It is fascinating, and it means, Adam, just briefly, that it's the algorithms that will decide the next election, because all you get pushed is content that you linger over, and you end up in your little echo chamber, in your little political silo. That's going to decide the next election.
The algorithms might, and I hope they all tune into my new YouTube, Bev. I'm talking a lot of common sense on there. So these 16 to 20-year-olds want to start looking on my YouTube, and they might start understanding the world a little bit better.
Shameless plug, absolutely shameless plug, Adam Brooks, tonight.
Bev, can I say one quick thing, Bev?
Go on.
Bev, just very quickly.
Go on.
It is much, much more difficult in the social media age to try to bring people together than it is to tear us apart. There is no future in division. We need to come together under the flag of our country and embrace the reality of our differences, but be proud of our country. And the politician who can bring people together successfully will go down in history in our country.
Nigel Farage.
Well, we have all finally agreed on lots of things tonight, and I appreciate all your time very much. Matt Terrell, Laurie Ann Watkins, Adam Brooks, Matthew Stadlen from Beverly Ann Turner. Very good night. See you tomorrow night at midnight.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. Another day of showers today. Still pretty fresh, but warmer than yesterday. There is a risk of thunderstorms this afternoon, particularly